All right, let's do it. Welcome, everyone, for another episode of the Group Up Podcast. We're here for the second great 6v6 debate. It has been, I checked, it was like around 17 months, so like a year and a half since the first 6v6 debate took place. And I've brought as much of the original squad as I could, one imposter, to assess where we are a year and a half later. So much has changed. 6v6 is a reality once more, in no small part down to the people on this call. So let me introduce my guests and let's get to it. From ostensibly the 6v6 side, I don't think it'll be quite as divided as this was last time, but representing the 6v6 side, first of all, in the top right, it's Samito. Sam, what's up?
How's it going, man? Prayers out to everybody in Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati dealing with the floods. You know, it's been craziest storms I've ever seen over here. So I hope everybody's safe. But the street that I lived on, like one street under, like I would always walk these parks 10 feet underwater, like crazy,
Wow.
crazy. So yeah, glad to be back. Glad that 6v6 is back. Yeah.
Yeah, and heart goes out to those people. Stay safe. So I'm sure that's a cause close to your heart, much like this one, Sam. So hopefully it all goes all right. In the bottom left, representing the other half of the 6v6, it's Hawk. Hawk, what's up?
How you guys doing? I know some of you guys have like kind of moved away from Overwatch, done some other games, done some other types of content. I myself kind of like parted from Overwatch a little bit, but you know, it feels right to be back for this debate. I don't think it'll get nearly as heated as last time or as controversial as last time, but yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to kind of reflect and predict the future, you know.
Yeah, it's been a while, right? We'll get into it in a second about how that debate kind of actually shaped a lot of what came afterwards. But first, let's introduce the person to duel it out with them and did a great job last time. And he said he's prepared for potentially more 6v6 hate comments coming his way this time. In the top left, it's AVRL. AVRL, what's up?
I feel bad, man. Like Sam came out with this awesome heartfelt comment to Kentucky. Meanwhile, I had this whole gag planned, and now I feel bad for it. But yeah, it's planned, so I'm gonna do it. And what is if you notice, we're gonna get the Spilo, but he's got a gag himself behind him in the green screen. And as a group up semi regular, you know me from my backgrounds. I think the last time I was here, I didn't have my room set up right, so I was on green screen. Well, I got to do a throwback. I got to do a big ass story. But you thought, just for the ones that were here for the previous debate, you know what it is, guys. Come on, you know what it is. We got to get back in there.
Oh boy, what's
just for old time's sake,
back, guys. Avril's throwing it back.
What is he cooking?
He's throwing it back.
I didn't have.
Wait. This gag was okay.
Yeah, there it is. Bring it back. Bring it back.
Yeah, just for old time's sake.
So for those obviously listening on audio, he briefly lifted his green screen up to show the "I'm done" thumbnail from Samito.
Yeah, dude, that was a siren cooked on that one. That was one of the best thumbnails that he's ever made. That was a banger.
The best part is I'm ready. I said this to you before we even got started, Sam. Is like, I'm ready for all the Samito viewer hate for like a year after the debate, as I got last time. The funny thing is the amount of people that thought that me using that thumbnail last time was proof that I hated you or that we like had beef behind the scenes was so funny.
It's almost good for the show because people just love drama so much, and they'll try to make it wherever they can. It's just funny. It's just funny.
And I said to you, like, even AI, Grok says that you and that AVRL Samito beef is one of the biggest beefs in Overwatch. I'm like, this is it's just so funny. It's so laughable.
It's funny. We actually might have to coin that at this point. We'll have to coin it and make it an official
Start the
meme.
beef. Just start it on Twitter.
Start the beef. Yeah,
it's the duality of the internet, because it's like, on the one hand, sometimes we'll have an episode and we're like in agreement where we're like, yeah, this is good, this is bad, and people are like, this ain't a debate. Why you call it a debate? These guys agreeing. And then when you guys do debate something, they're like, well, they must hate each other. It must be that they're sworn enemies.
You can never win. It's so
all right. Well, since it is a debate, we still have another representative from the 5v5 side. Of course, this time we couldn't have Jake with us. Jake, who was a great active participant in the controversy, in the long discussions, in the back and forths. But unfortunately, he's been busy this time, so love goes out to Jake. But in his stead, an able replacement in the bottom right, Spilo. Spilo, talk us through your background, which not all the viewers will be able to see.
So people have always made fun of me for riding the fence with 5v5 and 6v6, right? Like trying to provide nuanced opinion, not try to let people make up their own minds. I got a real DM though that says, publicly announce your support for 6v6. So that's going to be our background for today. Question is am I going to cave to the IRA, or am I going to, go in another direction? We'll have to kind of wait and see. So glad to be here. How many of you guys saw the Jake versus Iron 5v5 66 debate for last year?
I did, yeah.
I hope it goes better than that. That's the first debate on that topic that I clicked off after 15 minutes.
I didn't even bother clicking it because
was
I knew
awful.
exactly what it was going to be.
I
knew it was going to
awful.
be. I knew it was.
It was
gonna,
immovable
yeah,
force versus unstoppable, or unstoppable force versus immovable.
Neither one of them will
the worst
concede
part of
any.
the debate.
Worst
Yeah.
debate I have ever listened to in my entire life.
Yeah, peak iron crash outs are truly.
Iron was like, I was like, oh my gosh, he's gonna punch the screen. Like
that was.
and Jake just sits there, smirking. Like
No, Jake would stun lock
loved
him. Jake likes to stun lock. Like Jake would stun lock Iron, and Iron would not be able to take the stun. Like you'd get
And
CC'd.
Iron would short circuit, and to give Jake a lot of credit too, like, and I know he gets this too, and I know you guys do, but to people at home, like you all might not. Spilo, we've talked about this quite a bit. There's this different, like the culture difference between pro players and like content creators and casual players is so polarizing. You all would not believe it. So to get a bit of a taste of that, Jake's like, what makes him so good is that he's so good at walking both because he had to live both, and so like he can go into that environment and like just crack a smile at any time, like because he knows what's coming. Just so funny. I thought it was good for comedy, Spilo. It was good for comedy.
it was really funny, but yeah.
Like he's just a good speaker. Like he could just gap most people in speaking ability. So
Truly,
Yeah,
truly, you
I
have
would-
to come here. You gotta come to group up for the superior 6v6 versus 5v5 discussion, right? That's where it actually belongs.
Yeah, I confess
Where it
my job's
originates.
gonna be a lot easier without Jake here, because half of my job in the last one was just cutting Jake off, being like, Jake, I'm sorry,
And
but
by the way,
I'm gonna let you finish, but
and I don't want to. This is hot. This is tough. I like my buddy Jake, but I do got to say this: the amount of people that are like, "Oh man, AVRL keeps cutting Samito off." I'm like, dude, that's Jake. Jake's cutting Sam off. I let Sam talk. What are we talking about? People are coming after me for that, blaming me for Jake. That's crazy.
That was honestly, I'm excited to follow that one up because I think that was one of the most like idea clashing, like hack and slash until we get to the bread and butter that that we've ever had. It was a good show, to be honest. So I'm excited to follow up. Actually, I have some hot takes, SPP. I've changed my mind on some
I'm
things.
sure.
I didn't think
I'm
I was going
sure.
to. So.
it wouldn't be an episode of the Group Up Podcast, but at least a few hot takes, especially when we get AVRL and Sam and Spilo all in here as well. Do love dropping your. Actually, Spilo usually keeps it nuanced, at least on this podcast, but AVRL loves to throw out the break glass moments, and Sam always breaks off into something at some point, especially with the earthy metaphors.
Yeah,
I was gonna-
one's coming nowhere.
I was gonna say on the note of what you just said, actually, not to like toot the horn of this podcast, because I have no hubris about what the podcast does or doesn't do, but I do think the first 6v6 debate had a massive impact in a way that I never thought it would on the
None of us
ecosystem of Overwatch's format. I don't think anyone did. Yeah, I don't think anyone anticipated, just to set the scene for anyone who maybe doesn't remember or didn't listen to the original 6v6 call. Like when we had it, 6v6 was just an idea floating around, right? It was just like people were like, maybe we should go back to 6v6. Like maybe it was better. It was just like a movement that was starting to emerge, but it was in no way, I don't think any of us conceived that it would ever return in any form back to Overwatch at that time. But I think the debate went so well. You and Sam, and Sam and Hawk, you guys did such a great job, I think, of advocating for the 6v6 side. I think a lot of people came away being like, you know what, these guys are saying something worth listening to. Like this, there's something here. And I think AVRL and Jake did a great job of pushing back and giving the 5v5 side to the point where I do genuinely think the developers were like, you know what, maybe we should look at this. So I'll take it to Sam and Hawk on that note before we kind of actually get to talking about how you guys feel and the whole actual substance of the matter. How do you reflect on that? Like, where were you then, and how do you feel now on the fact that 6v6 is in the game now as a playable mode? I'll take it to Hawk first. Hello guys, SEB here, and the Group Up podcast is back, and I'd like to take just 30 seconds of your time to talk to you about two quick things. Firstly, Patreon. If you enjoy the content, then please do consider supporting directly, because Patreon takes only about 10% of the money you give, where YouTube and Twitch take 40 and 50% respectively. So if you'd like to support the podcast, then that is the best way to do so. Secondly, if you're someone who enjoys video essays or detailed analysis of movies, TV, or anime, then please do check out my second channel, The Soak, where I'll be making videos about those kind of topics much more frequently, and where a lot of my attention will go beyond just Overwatch. It would mean the absolute world to me if you guys would check it out, but that's it for now. Let's head back to the discussion.
Yeah, it was like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago at this point, and I remember we were talking about before the debate, like we didn't really know like how people would perceive it. People might have just thought we were like crazy when we started this debate, but then as it got published, we started like reading the comments like, wow, like people actually like kind of agree with us. Like we thought we might just be like looked at as like lunatics, but as after that debate, it kind of like took a lot of steam, and like some of us like it got pretty heated, but um I was kind of always kind of copium, like hopeful it would come back in some way. I made a lot of predictions about the end of that, like a classic and like a lot of like features of Rush One probably are going to come back. But yeah, I thought I was always hopeful, but it was like a pretty like controversial thing at the time that I didn't think people would resonate with so much.
Yeah, I think it took us all by surprise. And Sam, I don't think if you had said, if any of us had said at that call, like, oh, it's 18 months from now, they're going to release a playable version of 6v6, multiple playable versions of 6v6 in the real game. Like, I would have said, no, there's no way. But here we are.
Yeah, I mean, you have to give them credit too, because I think they found the best possible way to appease everybody, which is your end goal. Like that's what you really want. I mean, I'm really satisfied, to be honest. What I'm really impressed with is the fact they did it with OpenQ and it's actually good. That's what surprised me the most, and that's what I really am excited to talk about today. Because Hawk has been trying to push me on this train for I think you have brought this up, dude, since literally 2020. You and I, was it Gator that you guys would always talk about it? Probably like, dude, they should have brought back. They never should have got rid of OpenQ. You've always been on the OpenQ train.
I've never liked. I've never liked. I mean, I understand why people like Warlock, and I completely understand that. Like, I like above like a gold to like maybe a little plat level. Like, you kind of need Warlock for some games, but like I played an account from plat to GM, from mid masters to like high champ. I won my other cast place in champ in this open queue, and like most of my games have been pretty tame, like comp wise. Like
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm losing off loading screen. I'm not seeing those like 5 DPS comps that everyone like talked about. That does probably happen in quick play a bunch. Um, but like
What's the
there seems
implementation
to
of
be
it right now? What
that?
is the implementation? Is it like max? Like what is the format that they
It's
have
max
right
3.
now?
It's only 2 tanks. You can't pick 3 tanks, but you can pick 3 supports.
But it's max 3 everything else?
max.
Yes.
No, you can go
No,
anything.
no, no,
You,
no max.
you
I
can
don't
go.
think.
You can go 4 DPS, 5 DPS. You can go 6 DPS if you really like.
But you can't
I
pick
haven't
3
seen it.
tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't pick 3 tanks. You can pick only 2. Yeah, but you could pick 6 supports. You pick 6 DPS.
Mhm.
You can't pick 3
It's
tanks.
it's interesting, and I guess to wrap it up, also don't let him sell himself short. The dude's already freaking rank 1 on the open queue ladder. It's great, and I think that especially with Perk Watch too, I think that was, I don't want to say like Overwatch's darkest time, but that was a time where they really needed to like respond, and that was about the best response they could have. And I think a lot of those things could have been PvE abilities that they brought in. It really actually is like Perk Watch really is Overwatch 2. It's the first time that I can honestly say like, yo, like this is an iteration, And
Yeah,
actually,
I love perks. I
hot
love them.
take. I'm not sold on it. Like I still have to think about this more, but I think that perks are actually a better version of team ups that in rivals. I think that like they're actually a better
said that to
version
you.
because did you say that?
I
don't remember.
On Frito show.
Oh, you did. You're right. You're right. No,
I've said
you're
that
right.
to
You
yeah.
did. Yeah, and I think you're actually right because they're not conditional. Like they're more like you get like obviously like there's still synergies and stuff like that are really fun, but I think the ability to get that out on your own and be able to SPB, you brought something like that up a year and a half ago about like customizing. Yeah. And I actually think that this was a really good implementation. So it's nice to give them props on a lot of this stuff. I'm sad that it took this long as somebody who likes 6v6, but I'm not like mad about it at all. Like I'm just grateful that it's back and that, a couple of my buddies are back on, playing a little bit again, talking about it. So yeah, no, honestly, I'm happy. There's no reason to be bitter or anything. Like we have 6v6 back and it's got a really good coat of paint on it. I don't even know. It's not even paint. Like from the foundation up, with Perk Watch, I think it's great. So I'm just feeling kind of grateful that it's there and just satisfied, I guess.
Yeah, I think it really demonstrates that the dev team has diverse thoughts, right? It's not homogenous. The same way that we have different ideas where we're like, oh, like I want customizability. AVRL wants something else. He thinks like let's destroy tanks altogether. You guys might want 6v6. You guys might want open queue. Like we all have like these things, and I think the dev team works the same way where there's like someone advocating for something, and it's just a matter of like, well, when they have these team meetings, where eventually does it land that they're like, you know what, let's give this a shot. So we'll get to discussing in a sec. I'll quickly touch base with AVRL and then we'll take it to Spilo. AVRL, your reflections actually since the last call. How do you feel having seen all this go down?
I think that might be like my most famous content thing I've been a part of ever, because everyone always brings it up still to this day all the time. People always bring it. If it's some person that will like maybe show up in my chat and my stream for the first time, or like someone I'll interact with that's like maybe a little bit outside of my normal circle of like, fans interaction, whatever. It probably will be at least somewhat connected to like, oh yeah, I remember you on the 55636 debate, or if it's coming from a place where they just like really dislike me, it's probably from there as well. So like, I probably Jake probably did as well. Maybe a bunch of us did from different angles, but yeah, there were definitely wasn't fun dealing with some of the negativity surrounding that debate. But at the same time, the only things I probably regret from that debate is, despite it being extremely good for content, I admittedly the kind of like combativeness of that debate was probably really good for the actual content itself. So what Hawk was touching up on earlier in terms of like how heated it got, I don't think it ever got heated to the point where like we all walked away from that disliking each other. I think we all still walked away from that being really friendly. I mean, like, as I said, like it's really funny that people think Sam and I have some massive beef behind the scenes, even though despite the fact that after that debate, Sam and I go on to have multiple different podcasts and content things together. I still talk to Sam all the time behind the scenes in DMs after that, and we're always super friendly and we get on super well. But that debate probably was a little more combative than even I probably wanted to have it going in. It just kind of evolved that way. My regret was probably that I was probably a little too dismissive towards the 6v6 side. But, I think behind the scenes, it's always a situation where I still end up telling people this all the time. Anyone that, especially when the people that really dislike my side that I took on that debate, because I think the 6v6 side has like more fervent people backing it, and the 5v5 is more of the status quo, so they're like less willing to say much about it because they don't really need to, because that's the default game mode. Yeah, people will bring it up, and I have to, part of my defense always ends up being is like I could have defended either side. I'm a lot more neutral than people probably think I am. People think I'm like way more hardcore binary 5v5. We don't really live in that level of a binary world. I think people think too binary in terms of like you're either black or white in terms of your thinking style. You're either this or that, and there's no gray zone in the middle. Whereas for me, I might lean 5v5 as a preference, but I still like both. I could have argued for both. On that specific debate, SVB could have put me on either team, and I could have successfully argued both ways, because I can see the pros and cons and the benefits of either format, which is why like I'm not like fuming that 6v6 is back. I think that's a good thing. I think people who want to play 6v6 should be allowed to play 6v6. I think it's great. So yeah, props to the dev team for being able to handle that, because part of my issue was I didn't know if the devs were going to be able to juggle both 5v5 and 6v6 at the same time, because I think it's a lot to handle. So the fact that they've decided, no, we can do that is it's a great move on their part. So I'm happy with that. But it's as far as like to wrap up and conclude that thought, it's like, yeah, it was a pretty, it probably for all of us, that debate ended up being a lot more impactful than I ever thought it was going to be. But made for good content, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I this is one of the things where, as a host, it can be tricky for me to find the right guest, because I need someone who's gonna like convincingly give a certain opinion. You don't want a bunch of, like, sometimes it's good to have someone who's gonna be a bit more in the middle, but you kind of want people to give an opinion, express an opinion. It's one of the reasons I value you, AVRL, and you too, Spilo. I think you're both very good at removing your own personal interest from the thing you're discussing and saying, well, this is what I think on par, on evidence, this is what this is, and this what this isn't. So I think that's where perhaps the art of the debate is lost, because, I know we're kind of living in a very politicized, polarized environment, and I can understand not wanting to budge on an issue like that, where it's like something fundamental to your life. I think when it comes to like whether Overwatch should be 5.5.6, like it couldn't be lower stakes than that. It's like it's just a fucking game and you could do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So like people just debating and like exchanging ideas, I think is a perfectly great thing to do when it's something like this, which is like it's truly an opinion. Like there's no empiricism here, there's no real world consequences. It's just like, how do you like to play this video game? So Spilo, I'll take it to you. Do you have any reflections? And other than that, I'm going to ask you to kind of give actually, you can do both. You can go in a long one because I know you've been a bit patient and quiet for a while.
No,
And maybe maybe you're being gagged by the 66 IRA behind you. But firstly, any reflections from someone who wasn't part of the debate, if you have anything to chime in on just how the evolution of the 5v566 thing has happened. And then if you want to summarize, and I'm going to ask everyone to summarize their positions right now and like how they feel about like the format of Overwatch. Like, where do you stand?
Sure. I think the big danger with the big impact for both better or for worse of the 5v566 debate was like, I agree that, as you guys have said, that it was a little bit more heated than probably needed to, but I don't think it was so much like a personal thing. I think like you guys have already clarified that there was really anything personal. For me, I think like there's more of a responsibility of like how the community extrapolates those opinions, right? And that's exactly what AVRL was talking about. Like AVRL and Samito, they want to kill each other, right? Like that's kind of like that's kind of like the main, not danger, because like let's be honest, anybody can misconstrue anything that you say on the internet at any point in time and take it and run with it. But I think it's important when we're talking about like nuance and being respectful as much as you can. I'm not going to hurt Avril's feelings. I'm not going to hurt Ock's feelings. I'm not going to hurt Samito's feelings. I'm not going to hurt your feelings, SVB. I've known you guys for years. But someone is going to take something that I'm going to say and run with it in the opposite direction. So I'm going to try to be honest. I'm not going to try to walk any fences unless I really truly don't have an answer. But obviously how we say it, because I think everybody in this call knows that like it got really political, right? Like especially right after that debate, the 6 months to the year afterwards, like it was to the point where like people were really emotional and upset, and to the point where things were getting pretty ugly. And I think like that's kind of like where we have to be careful. You can't really be held responsible completely for your community, but you can set a good example by the things that you say. And like that's something that I'm trying to do a better job of myself. So now where I sit with 6v6 and 5v5, I think I have certain opinions about certain things. I think as a support player, 5v5 is infinitely more interesting. You have more space to make plays. You have more space to position yourself. You have more autonomy with how you can position and things that you do. I think more support comps are viable because you have a less of a demand for healing. There's still the solo tank format, which definitely puts a lot of emphasis off of that solo tank, and any angle that the solo tank occupies is obviously a very difficult angle to clear. I think that's objectively true. I think as a main tank, engaged tank, I'm kind of indifferent. I think engaged tank in 5v5 or 6v6, and by engage, I think main, Ryan, Winston, whatever, is always uncomfortable. You're always the center of attention. There's a couple of reasons why that may be. Some of those are armor. A couple of other things maybe we'll talk about later. I think for DPS, it's 50-50. I think ironically, I think 66 is really good for mobile DPS because you have the capability of taking a lot of different positions. And as me and Sam have talked about a million times, you can actively trade with tanks now, whereas in 5v5, you really can't, not safely. You can't actually win those trades. You can in 6v6. But there's a lot of other DPS that when you get stuffed in a choke, you don't have that mobility. You don't have that flexibility to take space and angles, even with Overwatch 2 maps. I think off-tank feels much better in 6v6. I think you don't have off-tank in 5v5. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as an enabler tank in 5v5. Every tank has to be an initiator in some way, shape, or form. And so that means tanks like Zarya, tanks like D.Va, they just don't exist. They just don't have an identity in 5v5 at all. And obviously, I'm sure that speaks close to Hawk, right? Considering that was his main role back in the day. I think for 6v6 to function, and I actually don't even think that you can really argue this with good faith, 6v6 cannot function without some form of open queue. I don't think it can exist without it. I think that it is done really well with the semi-soft open queue format because the number one argument against 6v6 is the queue times, and there is just no solution to that. But when you have soft open queue and you let players dictate things, especially mid to higher ranks, it's just not much of a problem. I'm not familiar what bronze, silver, gold, or plat looks like right now in open queue. That's probably something that they're going to have to figure out. But I think if you have 6v6, you have to have open queue. 5v5, you can have roll queue. And there's a world where we could probably have both. I think that there's still pain points about having open queue. You log into a game. I had a game yesterday. Lock in, insta lock Lifeweaver, insta lock Mercy, insta lock Moira, GG. Right, like it's over. Right, but that's that you could make the same argument about my team, my solo tank pick Malga and Watchpoint Gibraltar. Right, so you're always going to have some sort of agency taken away from you. For me personally, and I say this as somebody that doesn't play as much off tank, I generally play more support. I like engage tank, whatever. I have preferred the 5v5 format. But there's a really heavy asterisk here where if you look at my career where I have had the most enjoyment, most satisfaction with my work, it has been Overwatch 2 post. Mostly unrelated to 5v5 66. So my content creation, my hero design critiques, my enjoyment of the game. Honestly, my pro career, Hawk can relate, very stressful, very hard time in my life, was very rewarding, but a very stressful point in my time. And I don't always have positive correlations with that. And so for me, I am a bit of a survivor bias kind of a moment here, right? Where I like 5v5. I have a lot of positive correlations with 5v5, and I could sit there and I could justify why I have those things. But a lot of that is also just because of where my career has gone since 5v5 has come out. So it's unfair for me to pretend that that doesn't have some sort of an impact on my opinion of things. I would prefer it if they were able to keep both. If they have the queue times for it, if they can have the population for a 66 open queue and a 5v5 roll queue, that would be great. I don't know if that's reasonable. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be my preference. I find the game more interesting to coach at a base to medium level with 5v5 because positioning becomes a lot more interesting and nuanced for DPS and support. But I will concede that I think 66 has a higher skill ceiling at the pro level because you have simply just another moving part. And specifically a moving part, the off tank, that can both enable and disable. There's a lot more decisions with off tank. So that's kind of my 2 cents or 20 cents, right? I think, as always, it kind of toes the line. But I think, like, my point is that I have strong opinions about certain facets, but I don't know what would be better for the game. And if we could have both, I would have both.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone here was going to say eradicate the other. So I think that's, a fair stance to take. And I also think kudos to you for kind of being self-aware enough to separate your personal, like, experiences with your actual feelings on the format, right? Where you're saying, like, my life essentially has been better post Overwatch 2. And I can't deny that kind of correlate in the same way that a lot of people will say that, like, well, Overwatch 1 was just a beautiful time. And so how much of the format are we correlating with our own experiences of just a once in a generation game, right? Like Overwatch 1, at its launch, at its peak, was a once in a generation game. We were kind of seeing that.
The one thing I will say is I do think there are definite strengths and weaknesses to each format that I just don't think are really inarguable. And so I'm going to stand by those. We'll discuss those. So, like, I think both formats have their problems. And if anybody says that, like, 66 is totally fine, there's no drawbacks, they're idiots. And the same thing goes for 5v5 as well. Like, there are some major drawbacks and major problems for both. And so the important thing for me is to recognize that. And I think, Sam, when you and I had our 5v5 66 debate, it was like recognizing those shortcomings. And, maybe there is one that is objectively better for the game, but that still has shortcomings that we have to be aware of, right? So
perfect. Now, I know I could sense all three of these guys kind of raring to kind of chime in on some aspects of what you were saying. I'm going to let Hawk go first. Hawk, how do you kind of summarize your stance right now? Maybe you want to relate to some of the things that Spilo said, but how do you summarize your stance on just like the general format Overwatch right now?
Right now, I'm gonna be honest, like, I'm having probably the most fun I've had in this game since like 2018. Like, I'm having so much fun in the game. Like, I put a lot of hours into, like, when perks came out, and I think perks are an amazing, like, addition to the game. Like, probably the only addition they've ever really done to the game. That's like a different topic, but I think a lot of the changes they made have kind of just taken away a lot of freedoms of the game, or like depth. But like perks just add to it, in my opinion. But regardless of perks, perks in 6v6 and this like format open queue, just like it makes me like rediscover like the chaos and the fun like of like peak Overwatch, while also like fixing a lot of the issues that like Overwatch 1 had. Like, Overwatch 1 was not a perfect game. Everyone knows this. Like, we've seen this in the classics. Like, they brought back like 3 out of the 4, like, in my opinion, the worst patches of like Overwatch for the classics. Like, Moth Meta was not a good time. Goats was not a good time for how long it lasted. Vanilla Overwatch, probably the only time I ever actually stopped playing the game, Overwatch 1, because there was no ranked and like the patch was just so weird. But yeah, like I've been having such a good time. I think for the roles, tank on a whole just feels like on a whole, it just feels better. I do admit that, like Spilo said, the engaged tanks they're punishing. Like they are hard. Like they are very very difficult to get value out of sometimes. But I think what they've done with these perks and like some of the quality life changes of Overwatch 2 is that they've allowed you to like find new ways to get value without having a perfect synergy. Like you don't need to have that bubble on Winston, the Zarya bubble on Winston, or a Matrix on Winston, or like you don't need to have the Matrix on Diva, or I mean on a Ryan when you're playing Ryan. You don't need like a perfect synergy because there's like you cancel pin now, you have a right click, you have these perks that like can enable you in certain situations, and I think that adds a lot of like individual agency that people kind of like were lacking in Overwatch 1 because there was a lot of like not oppressed synergies but they were like really defined in Overwatch 1, and there was the infamous one, Double Shield, where it's just so easy to use and like so easy to get value out of for like every skill set, like skill rank of the game, that it really was punishing. Spilo?
Spilo's raising his
I want to
hand.
interject really fast here just to piggyback super fast, Hawk. I want one thing that really freaking irritated me about the last 5v5-66 debate is, and Avril is going to get mad at me, I don't want to talk about how OP tank synergies are.
Yeah, I don't either.
I want to talk about how bad certain tank synergies are, which Hawk has said has definitely gotten better since perks and since a lot of the Overwatch 2 reworks. I think the talk about like, oh, we can't have double shield, the double shield's irrelevant, it's not coming back. And I also don't want to talk about how Winston Zarya is OP because you have to time the bubble because it takes skill to express that. And I actually think that that's just never something that the average rank is going to deal with. What's more important is that like, okay, how bad is it to have Winston Malga, or how bad is it to have Diva Roadhog, right? Like maybe we could talk a little bit about that. Again, I do agree that's less bad, but like, dude, that was so boring to watch because it's like, dude,
it's theoretical
cares,
just like
the theoretical perfect tank synergy that actually takes skill to do. Like, dude, the 99.9% of players aren't dealing with that anyway. It's a waste of space. If they get the perfect double bubble off, kudos to them. Let them have it.
It feels way more open. Pretty much what I'm trying to say. It feels way more open what you can run.
I'll just say I'll let Hawk finish this thought, and then I'll let Avril respond because he's been physically referenced there. So Hawk, finish your thought.
I can't believe that you cut Hawk off, Spilo. Everyone get mad at this guy. Everyone get mad at this guy for cutting people off.
Why are you cutting me, cutting him off, dude?
Well, I'm gonna cut all of you off. Hawk, you, and then we'll get to Avril.
Yeah, I'll just finish up on the roles. I've actually probably played more support in like the last like month or whatever it's been, 3 weeks, than I have probably since role lock on like one of my accounts, just flexing around, just playing heroes. And I actually think that role feels very, very impactful at 6v6. Like it feels good to be behind the wheel on Kiriko. This hero has been a menace in 5v5 for like 2 years, and I'm like, wow, this hero absolutely dominates in 6v6. Like you can completely just pound the enemy tanks by just headshotting them one time. They have to back up, or you're double TPing around now, which is pretty broken, but it's fun. I've had some success on like playing Alari, just like playing as a third support, like taking an off angle. Ana still feels good. Like I think support is still really fun in 6v6 because you have more responsibilities to heal a little bit, but your damage actually matters a lot. Like the damage you do get off, you actually can't feel it, like especially on the tanks. And then finishing off on DPS, I think this role is still like so impactful in 6v6. With the passive regen, you're still able to take angles, but you're not able to like get the angle for free like you can right now in 5v5. You either work for a little bit more, but when you trade that out for being able to actually impact like the frontline exchange without having to like full on counterpick the enemy tank playing like Tor or Bastion, it feels good. Like it feels pretty good. I don't have most of my hours DPS. I probably have like 10-15%, probably like 30% on support, and like the rest on like tank. But I've been really enjoying it, and I think this has just been such a good like first like real ranked test, and it's a couple like couple broken things. Most of them, in my opinion, are perks, but I think it's good. Like I really don't have like many major complaints. Like I'm just having a good time. I'm glad it's back, and yeah, that's about it.
Nice. I'll let Sam go so soon as well, but Avril, your firstly, maybe you want to respond if you do want to respond. Maybe you're like, that's fine what Spilo just said, but maybe you want to respond to that, and then if you want to give your stance on the current format.
Yeah, the temptation to speak out of order here and do the response. Now I'll leave the response to like maybe I'll fit the response into what I was really going to say, but I'll do this more in chronological order. So yeah, where I currently stand on the whole thing is like, and this partially goes into what I was saying earlier in terms of reflecting back to the previous debate, which is that I do think there is space for both in the game. And I was probably maybe a little dismissive of that the last time around, although I will say, maybe changing things up a little bit here and retroactively maybe changing the stance. But the position I had before was mostly that I don't think the devs can keep up with handling both modes. Now, if the devs can actually put enough resources into handling both 5v5 and 6v6, I don't see why we can't have both in the game. So I've never had this sort of super hardline position that no, we have to have either 5v5 or 6v6, and the other one has to die for sure. Now, if we end up in a world where the devs feel like they can only support one mode, then maybe that conversation has to come up again. But as it is right now, with the current implementation of the modes, maybe there are some like queue time issues. I don't know what all the queue times are currently, but that needs to be addressed. And I don't know if that ends up being a problem. Then maybe we have to look at like how we end up supporting the modes down the line. But basically, we do have a reasonably large amount of 6v6 players in the game that actually want to play the game in that mode, and they enjoy that. And I think that's fine. For the people that enjoy 6v6, they should be able to play 6v6. For the people that still enjoy 5v5, they should play 5v5. And I enjoy 5v5. It's always been a preference for me. I've never been hardline, like it has to be this and not that one. I prefer 5v5. It's always been a preference at the end of the day. It's kind of like one of those situations where I feel like I say, I prefer waffles, and everyone says, oh, so you hate pancakes. Like, that's not what I said, dude. That's not what I said. I said I prefer one. Doesn't mean I hate the other one. So I think both are fine, but I'm going to prefer 5v5. And the reasons I prefer 5v5, partially some of the stuff that Spilo brought up, but it comes down to the fact that I think it's going to eventually, I think it's an easier time overall to balance the game, given that less variables is going to make it easier to adjust things. Now, obviously, the counterpoint is going to end up being like people are going to bring up Malga, and they're going to bring up all the unfun metas that we've had in 5v5. And I'm not saying the balance team is perfect. In fact, lots to still be desired there. But I do think currently, as it stands right now, when people watch this, they're going to have to remember that I'm talking in April of 2025, late season 15, just before hit to season 16. The game seems pretty balanced in a good state. 5v5 feels really good right now after the Malga nerf. Most tanks seem pretty viable. The meta seems pretty open. And in general, in 5v5, I don't think there's that much counterpicking happening right now in Season 15 compared to previous seasons with the introduction of perks. In fact, they can even go harder on that and make, perks a little bit more punishing in the sense that right now with perks in Season 15, if you swap heroes late into a game, you get your perks fast, you get additional XP, you get like an XP bonus. I don't even think they need that. I think they can just get rid of that entirely so that like counterpicking becomes even more punishing. That's just my personal thought. Maybe that's too punishing, but I don't know. I'm just like, if you want to kill counterpicking even more. But the other reason that counterpicking even exists in my mind, and I do think this, by the way, is one of the strongest points against 5v5. So yes, I am capable of acknowledging that there are issues with 5v5. In fact, I've done so many times. And one of the primary issues is the counterpicking issue. And I don't think it's enough to just mitigate that by punishing people for counterpicking, because you could just get bad RNG. It was like, well, I'm still getting counted here, but I now can't counter them back without getting punished. That doesn't feel good either. And I think a part of this reason, part of the problem always comes down to the fact that the transfer between 6v6 to 5v5 was never done completely. We talked about the fact that even on the previous debate, they being Team 4, were going to adjust all the tanks and maybe rework the tanks to more fit a 5v5 sort of tanking environment. That to date still has never really happened. I still don't know what's going to happen with that. I don't know if they're going to do that. It might just be too hard because in Blizzard's mind, some of the reworks are fine, but then some of the reworks are you get a pig pen now for Hog, and it just doesn't do enough to change the hero at all. So a lot of the problems I see with counterpicking is actually coming from the Overwatch 1 heroes, and particularly the off tanks, as Spilo touched up on, who just don't have an identity in 5v5 as a solo tank. It's really hard to play these heroes and have a solid identity because, they're just not designed in that kind of main tanky kind of way that can cover a lot of ground. If you actually look at the way tanks are designed now in 5v5 in modern Overwatch compared to Overwatch 1, the tank designs, everything from, I want to say, Sigma onwards, because Sigma even feels that way a little bit as well. Everything from Sigma onwards feels way more inclined towards 5v5. They can also do a lot of things. They're way more generalist tanks. And before everyone says, well, that means that they all just do the same things. Like, no. Stop being hyperbolic, guys. They do enough that they cover a lot of ground without like being absolute master of all trades. Like, it's like they're capable solo tanks that have less weaknesses, but maybe in some regards, maybe even less strengths in like the pure 1-to-1 regard than some of the old tanks. What I'm basically saying is like, a lot of the old tanks, when you look at the Rhine designs and stuff like that, the super dated designs, obviously they don't fit in a 5v5 because there's just so many outstanding weaknesses. It's obvious why a lot of Overwatch 1 tanks need an off-tank pairing, because you need these guys to have some sort of support on the side from another tank to mitigate, to allow you to, basically overcome some of the built-in weaknesses to the tanks. And that causes situations where you get counter-picking, where, the Zarya is beaming down the divas. I don't know how you're going to fix that unless you do something with Matrix, or you just you fix kind of the interaction between beam weapons and the Matrix. I think Matrix is just a super insane design in the first place. I think it's super problematic.
I'm just going to ask you to finish your thoughts soon, AVRL, by the way.
Yeah, and I guess I'll finish by somewhat addressing Spilo's commentary there as well about the tank synergies. Maybe I'm like overestimating a little bit how important it is, but it's still an important point to me, and I'm still going to keep talking about it because it is still the most important synergy from a 6v6 standpoint in the game compared to any other synergy. Any inter-role synergy that exists in the game between damage, support, and tank is still the one that has the highest impact in terms of the synergy between itself in the same role, just based on how the mitigation abilities work. Damage and healing still operate on 1-to-1 factor in terms of ratio. Damage mitigation does not operate in that way. Damage mitigation operates in a multiplicative way, not a linear way, which makes it extreme in terms of how the synergy ends up working. And that still needs to be addressed in 6v6. I don't think it's fixed. I think perks have at least allowed tanks and modern tank changes, like Ryan being able to cancel charge, has allowed some of the tanks to have a little bit more control and like shore up some of the old weaknesses. But it doesn't mean that those synergies don't still have huge impacts in the game in positive and negative ways.
Okay, thank you. I'll quickly, Hawk, because I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah.
Quickly, because I know Sam's been very patient, so I'm going to let him go in a second.
Let him go.
I just want to ask Alvaro, like, what tank synergies right now in 66 do you think are like super problematic, like where it's like, wow, I can't do anything about this? Because I kind of want to get this out of the way. Like as Spilo said, like I don't.
If we do this, Sam's not going to talk. He's not going to go for a long time.
In my
I'm
experience,
enjoying the ride.
I've been winning and losing to the most like rancid tank comps known to man. Like, it doesn't feel like just because I matrix my Rhine, I'm winning automatically. Like, there's still like a skill matchup if they're on hog ball. Like,
I didn't say you would win automatically.
No, I obviously wouldn't win automatically. I'm just like wondering like what's like so problematic to the point where we have to remove a tank in that regard.
I'm gonna leave it up to SVB here because if I go, this is gonna be a whole topic.
You know what? Let's put a little pin on it just for now.
Okay.
I will let Sam. I just want Sam to actually give his stance because it's been a while since we heard from Sam. It's important to hear from everyone.
Yeah.
And then at some point we'll come back to like, just like the reflections. We'll talk about that in the reflection stage because we still have a lot to like. How do we reflect on it now with not just Overwatch but also Marvel Rivals and what problems that's brought up, so we can remind me if I forget to bring up this whole tank synergy problem. But Sam, go ahead.
So just to remind me, the question is like what my reflections are. And, like,
your current stance on like the format, right? Like how do you feel? And if you want to chime in anything said, then go ahead.
So I remember the one take where I was like, I think this could happen, but I'm not sure if it will. Is that something would happen. At the time, we didn't know Marvel Rivals was going to exist. I think the thing that really proved it was Marvel Rivals, that it could work, but there were a lot of murmurs, and like it was clear that like there was demand for it. It was that, I was a massive I was a massive roll queue advocate. I thought it was one of the best things for the game at the time to get away from goats. And, I will toss AVRL lob here. I think an old Blizzard take from Kaplan's team, because I know he loves to go in and dog on it, was incorrect. And Marvel Rivals and actually Overwatch 2 have both proven that to be incorrect, in that it's not true that everyone just wants to play DPS. It turns out when you put out compelling products and compelling, you remember the analogy, the ice cream analogy that Jeff used, that everybody wants to get vanilla? Well,
Do you want to
out
just like refresh? Do you want to, because for anyone who maybe
Sure.
doesn't refresh, just refresh that
So
analogy.
there was an old analogy that the devs used when trying to solve the queue time issue in role lock, and it was Kaplan's team, and I think at the time they said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who remembers this, but essentially the analogy they used about tank support and DPS was an ice cream shop, in that DPS was vanilla, and that everybody wants vanilla, and that it doesn't matter how much strawberry ice cream you have. At the end of the day, if people want vanilla, like the volume of specific flavors that you have is not going to change what that customer wants at the end of the day when you're going to an ice cream shop. It turns out that, at least in the gaming space, I think, would you guys agree with me at this point that's not true? If you add a lot of compelling characters in either role that will make people want to play them, people will play them. I think Marvel Rivals has really proven this with how high their support pick rates are in a lot of different characters, and really, frankly, how you've seen queue times flip-flop all the time in role lock formats between, at one point DPS was the highest queue time, but then it went to supports or waiting 15 minutes a queue when like Alari had come out and like it was a very good role and people want to play support. So I think that narrative has been destroyed. Does anybody disagree with that, or does anybody want to chime into that before I go to the next point? Like, any rebuttals, or am I wrong?
I don't
So
think
I-
support's ever been the question, to be honest with you. I think support has
Sure.
always been a relatively popular role. The question has always been tank.
Mhm.
And that one is such a hard one for me because I do think that a lot of Overwatch 2 tanks are relatively compelling, even in 5v5. But Rivals for me, like, I was talking with Hawk about this separate discussion, but I think Rival tanks are complete boring. So
Yeah,
I've never
true.
found any of them personally compelling.
Sure.
So I don't
Sure.
know. I think yeah,
Go
so I
ahead.
see what you're saying though. It's like you could say like it's strawberry ice cream, but that's like a lazy analogy because it's like, okay, well, what about banana ice cream, or what about like eventually, like if you could make enough compelling, but I don't know. It's tank is still tank, so I still think it's going to be a difficult role.
But it can be mitigated is the point. It
Yeah,
absolutely can be mitigated.
There's bad and
we all
there's
accepted
okay.
that. Yeah, we at least me personally, like, I was under the presumption that's like 100% fact. You can never sway it. Like, it is what it is. But I think you actually can. I think there actually are a lot of ways that you can do that. Point number 2 that I think
let me just quickly, Sam. I'll just
Sure.
quickly earn my money as a moderator, which is that I've actually gone and found the quote. So I'll read you the original. I'll read you the quote. And at least if we trust this source, it says, Jeff Kaplan said, "This is how I've been thinking about it. Imagine we're an ice cream store and we have 3 flavors of ice cream. We have chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, and you have to line up all 3 flavors separately. So imagine the vanilla line is way, way longer than the chocolate or strawberry line. I feel like it's the wrong philosophy to ask, what can we do to convince the vanilla people to like strawberry more? It makes more sense to say we need more vanilla ice cream." So there you go.
That's not necessarily a bad analogy. I think that at least how it's applied to like this genre, I think it's way more complicated than that, right? And like, so not trying to take a shot at Jeff on that one, but because I kind of agree. Like, I understood the POV, but it turns out, hey, people might like vanilla chocolate chip cookie dough, which could be a Zarya, for example, right? It's still vanilla, but it's like, hey, like I can log on and play Zarya all day, right? Maybe that's your answer, is, and just do the little things, right? Like even Tank Doomfist, another example. Junker Queen, like very DPS-esque tanks, less Orisa, Sigma, and Wrecking Ball, and more heroes that are gonna, draw that actual DPS player in. I think supports were another great example. Kiriko, Ilari, right? Like there's a long list of those characters. I can talk about this in Overwatch or Rivals, but I guess where I take this next is my suspicion in that role lock might not be the answer for my personal preference, right? Because at the end of the day, if super tanks are the answer to a role lock format in 5v5, I just don't want to play that. And for me personally, I think what I've enjoyed the most about 6v6 is the fact that there aren't super tanks with 15 passives and giga abilities. In fact, actually, I think I could see myself enjoying 5v5 open queue when there's not the super tank that kind of gets forced, in my opinion, by the format. So I think what I've been able to reflect on is, what about 5v5 was it that I didn't like specifically? Is it that there's only 5 players on the map? Yeah, it feels a little barren, and I do prefer the energy and the chaos of the 6, sure. But I think the biggest thing for me was the fact that tanks became giga tanks, and it changed so much in the game, and I just didn't find that to be more fun. So what I've come to the conclusion of, SVB, is I am kind of a roll lock or a open queue advocate now. Rivals has really changed my mind on this. And a prediction I made before Rivals came out, and I'm not sure if it's going to happen yet or not. I don't really know. Full disclosure, is that Rivals Open Queue would make Overwatch get rid of roll lock altogether. And I'm not sold on that yet, but I will say, like, I actually have enjoyed playing Open Queue a lot, and I've actually enjoyed the Open Queue format more in Overwatch 2 and Marvel Rivals than I did the latter half of Rollock, which really surprised me because that was something that I was really on the train of. I was a big Rollock advocate when it came out, and I think it was better than Goats, sure, but I think that maybe Goats should have been handled differently. And to give Frito credit, I know he's not, he might sneeze right now when I say this. Having bans in an open queue format is game changing. I can't believe that I was not on the ban train earlier. I would like to see Overwatch go to a 6v6 open queue ban format, at least whatever the 6v6 format is. I don't really care if 5v5 stays in the game. I have 6v6. I can go play that with my friends, and I enjoy it. But that's really the biggest surprise for me is my shift. God, Nateson's probably sneezing right now too. He just ran a 10K marathon. I don't know if you saw. He got up at 4:30 in the morning. He went and ran that. But yeah, no, I mean that's been the biggest takeaway for me, SVB, is that I actually. And I know Hawk is probably grinning over there too, because dude, like you were right, man. I can't. I told him. I literally before the debate, Hawk was like, "Dude, we got to talk about open queue." I was like, "Do not fucking talk about open queue. That is such a massive can of worms, and we cannot get to that."
Last one.
Yeah,
the first
debate. You wanted to talk
I'm
about
like,
open queue
whatever.
so
Like,
bad.
I can't convince people of that.
We had a whole doc, SVB, and I tell you what, if there's ever a documentary about the debate, I will send you the doc, and you'll see the comments from Hawk and I at like 4:30 in the morning, like just like I'd wake up, there'd be like just all these comments, but no, I've actually gone to the open queue train. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. But I think with perks and all the different, particularly now that they have way more supports in the game and way more tanks in the game that are actually compelling to play. Spilo, they've got it's not just strawberry in the tank roll where you can only pick Orisa. They've got, vanilla chocolate chip cookie dough, Oreo swirls, a lot of stuff that lets the vanilla people kind of enjoy that, and I think they should do a lot more of it. I think they've done a really good job. Even Malga to some degree. So yeah, I'm really loving OpenQ 6v6 perk watch. I think the perks update is easily the best update that Overwatch has ever received. Easily, I don't even think it's a competition. Best update they've ever done. Really, actually lives up to the name Overwatch 2 for the first time, in my opinion. And they've really found their they've found their voice on it, and they really should keep hammering home. They should be really happy with what they've done, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great point to segue onto the thing that I was inevitably going to get to anyways, which is just that while there is this ostensible divide between 5v5 and 6v6, there's actually maybe an intra divide of roll queue versus open queue, right? Because I think that's another thing. And I think, again, it demonstrates roll lock versus,
because you could do a preferred roll queue, which is something I want to bring up. Sorry to interrupt you.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. It's important to get the terminology right, but let's just say 2-2-2 versus open queue, right? Let's put it that way. So 2-2-2 versus open queue, or 1-2-2 in the case of 5v5 versus open queue. And again, I think it's funny. This is where it shows the kind of intersectionality of opinions on how the game should be, because I think it's like, funnily enough, Hawk and I had like a little DM exchange. I think when a while back, I made like a video summarizing like the history of like the formats of like how we went from one format to the other. And in that, like, after summarizing everything, I suggested the format that we brought up on this podcast a few times, Sam, which is like, maybe we should try like an open queue in 5v5, or like with a soft lock where you can't have more than like, let's say 2 tanks or whatever, which is ultimately what they've kind of done in the 6v6 now. And I got a DM from Hawk being like, yo, I watched your video and I actually really agree. I think open queue was the real loss in Overwatch. And me and him were like, yeah, I agree. I think like open queue was the real loss of like where the fun, I felt like, started to fade away. But of course, easy to say that at the time they had a different choice to make. They had a different dilemma of goats and how they didn't solve that. So I think let's shift now the discussion to the reflections on this part of it, right? The role limits versus the open queue, and maybe even the soft open queue. I'll take it to Hawk.
Add something.
Yeah, go ahead, Avril.
Add something really fast. Is that I'll make this supremely quick. I disagree with the premise that roll queue had anything to do with the goats. It was primarily to deal with just in really imbalanced lobbies with too many of one role and not enough of other roles, specifically tanks.
1 second.
I feel like it probably was both two birds with one stone, right? Because then on the one hand, Go ahead.
It,
Go ahead.
it
You
won't be
finish.
0% goats. It won't
No.
be, oh, there was zero consideration goats. But I think, and I'm not suggesting that you are saying this, but I've seen from a lot of the peanut gallery people saying it's like, oh, it was because of goats. I'm like,
Sure.
and they just ignore the fact that it was, I think mostly, if we're going to assign a percentage, I'll say 80-20, 80% because they needed to balance the lobbies and make the lobbies fair, more so than to deal with the goats.
Yeah,
I think it's
it-
more about DPS than tanks, though. I think like the lobby experience, because I did a lot of coaching at that point in time. A lot of gold, plat, silver, bronze players. Right, I was still in contenders doing streams. I mean, literally, it felt like the majority of games had 3 DPS or more. So I haven't noticed that as much in the current implementation. I don't know if it's just like currently. I think also before we move into the discussion, like one question that needs to be is like, what are the advantages of open queue? And it's queue times, right? Like we can all agree that it's like 95% queue times with the value of open queue or some form of soft rule queue, right?
I think
Some
that's
people
a
watching might be
benefit.
confused.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's
I
a
think
benefit.
there's more benefits though. Some of them more niche than others, but I mean I could list some of them right now.
I
That
would love to hear them. Yeah.
I think I've said this to you before on Twitter or something, but I think that if you're moving away from like a role shooter into more of a hero shooter to the aspect of my hero pool isn't just my preferred heroes isn't just whatever I queued or interlocked into one role. For example, whenever I queue DPS and I get Havana or I get Circuit Rail, I get so tilted. Like I get unbelievably tilted that I lock myself into this experience and I can't go Sigma and someone else can't go Widow or someone can't do this. And like my hero pool can be Diva, Sombra, Alari, Kiriko. And like I enjoy these heroes. I'm buying these hero skins. I'm actually caring about these skins. I'm actually interacting with the new content instead of just like this is my role. I don't give a crap about the other SRs, and I'm only gonna play this. And I think another big factor. This is very very niche. Like no one really cares about this. Is that one leaderboard is nice. I like having one leaderboard compared to 3. I think it makes it more competitive. I think it's more interesting. And going back to queue times, I think queue times obviously is a big factor, but like when you lose a bad game and I'm sitting in queue and I'm looking at the replay and I can look at it 3 or 4 times before I get a game, I get so frustrated. I'm like, just put me in the game. I don't want to mope and like hope about a loss. I just want to get back into the game. And that's one of the reasons like Rival's so good. Like you just press play again, you go right back into the game in that regard. And from my experience, like from plat to like mid GM, like the queues are instant in 6v6 open queue. At least they were like a week ago, and it's like wow, like I don't have to wait at all, and it doesn't feel like the comps I'm getting in these games are like 5 DPS unwinnable comps. Like sometimes you'll have solo tank every once in a while, or you have like maybe 3 DPS, and it's not it doesn't feel awful. Like 3 supports, very very good, but there just seems to be a bunch of new support players and a bunch of tank players that want to play this format. And honestly, like in like the higher ranks, like Masters GM, like there seems to be a lack of like DPS players. Like unironically, there seems to be a missing like pool of like DPS players, because there's just so many tank players and support players in these higher ranks. Maybe that's because they're willing to flex and they're getting higher SR and they're getting like a kappa inflation of SR because of that. But yeah, that those are my like reasons why I think open queue is good.
To add on to
Yes.
that, I think that those roles are just more fun, at least for me. Like I saw the same thing. Like I didn't have a game where there were just like all DPS. I think the new designs in particular, like things like Queen, things like Tank Doomfist, for better or for worse, you do have the Doomfist with like 20 deaths, which might as well be a DPS at that point with how much they're like there's a lot of those. Like seriously, there's a lot of those. But it's impressive. Like I think this is something that we brought back up a quick reflection, SVB, that Hawk and I called, that I think he was completely right on, was that there was a claim that like the 5v5 tanks would have to be reworked to fit in 6v6. But I think those heroes fit better in 6v6 because the off tank role can exist than you could ever try to cram them into 5v5. Like
There's
Queen
so many
as an off
fewer
tank.
bad synergies, right?
Yeah,
Like
well-
Hazard can do whatever, Queen can do whatever, Doom is
Yeah.
fine. Doom can fit with a dive tank or a brawl
Yeah.
tank, right?
Yeah, and because both of the tanks are like much more relative to like the DPS, and you can actually kill them. Like there's not massive mismatches to where like you feel like like every role can like fill like if this makes sense, like a DPS, if a DPS is forced to tank in a certain situation, like if you're forced to frontline as a DPS, like you might have an easier time doing that because you're not going to be up against a raid boss Malga if I'm playing Reaper. Like I might be able to make a play, and I think those little things like really add up. So to add on to Hawk, like I think the new hero designs like Juno, Kiriko, even Alari, like, but particularly the tanks. Holy shit, Junker Queen, Tank Doomfist, Hazard, like all of those heroes are such a massive improvement from what was out at the time in Overwatch 1 with like Orisa Sigma Ball, in my opinion. But I think that adds a lot to it. That makes things a lot more fun.
All catching strays.
So
Yeah.
so I'm gonna let AVRL and Spilo talk. Just to
Sure.
actually address Spilo's original question, I think to summarize of like what are the benefits of OpenQ, I think one, obviously we discussed queue times. Two, as Hawk said, it allows for inter-role flexing, right? So you can kind of switch roles in the middle. It's a potential, and each of these points I think has a counterpoint that you could bring up and say, oh, well, what about the times when it's not true? But potentially it can fit a person's hero pool better to flex between roles rather than be locked to a role. You could argue comp flexibility is another one, right? Where you can actually, you won't see the same comp every game, right? So it's not like 2-2-2 or 1-2-2. It's like you could get 3 of supports or 3 DPS. That is both good or bad, right? But I guess inarguably, it's more of a refreshing game. Like it's a different experience every time, right? If you're in open queue, you're more likely to have a different game every time as opposed to in roll queue. So I think these are some of them. If there's any others, feel free to chime in that people can think of that are benefits to OpenQ, but I think these are some of the major ones. AVRL, do you have anything you want to chime in on the OpenQ roll queue?
So what's funny, I have a fun potential theory here, is that I think part of the reason why 6v6 feels better now, particularly even with OpenQ in modern day in season 15 in 2025, is because we had to go through the lessons, excuse me, the lessons of our past few years of playing 5v5 and even extended beyond that, the years of playing role queue. So what that basically means is the Overwatch audience has now been conditioned to playing the quote-unquote correct or at least a balanced lineup in terms of roles because we've done that for so many years. So subconsciously, if you've played Overwatch for any amount of time in a significant manner in role queue, and now you're suddenly jumping into 6v6 open queue, you're automatically leaning in terms of like a psychological bias towards playing a more balanced composition and filling out your balance. You can still be a selfish player and just be like, there's 3 DPSs, I'm going DPS anyway. You could be that guy, but for the most part, I think players have been conditioned psychologically to balance the roles themselves because that's what they played for the past few years, right? And I also think there's on the tank discussion, the new tanks fitting better into 6v6, the new tanks being the Overwatch 2 tanks and just updated tanks feeling good in current modern Overwatch and 6v6 is indicative of the fact that it really proves how much the tank design has matured and how kind of rough around the edges and how basic the tank design, some of the other design on other heroes as well on other roles, but particularly the tank design in Overwatch 1 really was. I have a huge problem with some of the existing tank designs in Overwatch 1 where there's like way too many glaring weaknesses, way too much reliance on the rest of the team, whether it's going to be your supports to giga heal you and pocket you the whole time, whether it's going to be from an off tank to just like support you and damage mitigate for you, or whether it's the DPS where like, please, I need my DPS just to deal all the damage because I can't do anything. Mature and modern tank design allows you to do a reasonable amount of different things that allows the game to feel, I think, more updated and just a better experience even in the tanking position itself.
Quickly, Sam, and then back to Spilo.
Sam
Yeah,
wants to say.
I think
stopped
AVRL's
because I know Sam wants to.
Well,
jump
I
in
think
forward.
you're right. Like, and I realize, like, you know, there's just something I butt heads with you guys on maybe a little bit. Spilo, I don't. You tell me where I was like,
yeah.
no, the tanks shouldn't do everything. Like, it's bad if the tanks do everything. But after going back to playing 6v6, I've realized what it was that I didn't like. It wasn't that the tanks can't have abilities to help themselves and play make. It was that they can't have the abilities to help themselves and play make behind all the super stats that everything got. Like, people forgot after playing so much 5v5 just how much raw survivability stats the solo tank was given. So when I play against like a tank Doomfist or like a Queen or any of this like Overwatch 2 tanks in 6v6 when their stats are more relative. I'm way more okay playing against those types of abilities where the heroes are modern designs, like AVRL says. So I don't want to retract like one of my old takes, but I want to hone it and like really nail down what my gripe was. It actually wasn't with those designs. I've realized it's when they have those designs and insane survivability too. So yeah, AVRL, I agree with you 100% on what you just said.
Yeah.
I wanted to like kind of course correct myself and like really narrow down what one of my big gripes were that I realized.
Yeah, no, I've done plenty of that. Don't worry. There's plenty that I reflect on. You know what? Like I've updated my take since then. And to just continue on my train of thought, and
Go
I've only maybe got like one thought left, and then we can go on. But yeah, in terms of like the whole role queue versus open queue sort of situation as well. Like I think open queue in an ideal world is better for all the reasons listed. Better queue times. You have the flexibility to play what you want. People bring this up as well, and I guess I'll just touch up on this. People being just people out there saying like, oh, you know, there's more creativity. I'm like, I guess, but at the end of the day, it's like I think that's maybe a bit of an overrated point. Mostly it just comes down to the fact that you have to contend with imbalanced lobbies, and that will happen. And there are going to be some negative experiences due to imbalanced lobbies, but at the same time, I think because the player base has been more conditioned to play balanced lobbies, given that we've just been so conditioned from years and years worth of role queue to play those compositions, because that's what we're used to now. What we being the overall player base. I mean, I think if you're a high level player, you always understood this, but now you just needed to psychologically condition the rest of the player base to go along with that, and they have. You get a better experience, ironically, in open queue after having years and years of forced role queue, because you've been forced to learn that no, you should play a balanced team comp, even though it should have been obvious from day one. So yeah, in an ideal world, and I actually have this take for both 6v6 and also open queue. In an ideal world, we would be playing 6v6 in open queue. Someone's going to clip that, I'm sure. But in an ideal world requires, you know, the negative aspects of that to not be so existing, which is that people swaying the lobby into something super weird with like not enough. Maybe you don't even get a tank, or you only get one tank and it doesn't feel good, or you don't get enough supports or whatever. Or, you know, a 6v6 situation where people just like pick insanely wrong heroes with negative synergy, which I think is more of a negative than it could be in the same situation in 5v5. Not to say it doesn't exist in 5v5. It's along the same lines of the argument I always make of where like the highs are high but the lows are lower. And I say the same thing for 5v5, 6v6 as I do for open queue versus role queue. But I think for 6v6, open queue is required because you need to mitigate the queue times. And if you were to implement role queue, as much as I think it would be better, on average, the experience would be better if to like have, you know, a fixed amount of roles to make it a balanced lobby. You will just simply get way too high queue times because there won't be enough tanks. They just simply won't. I don't think you can make people want it. You can't make people want vanilla ice cream. This is the other problem with the analogy that Jeff had. It's like, oh, maybe we just got to supply more vanilla. I was like, dude, if people just don't like vanilla, it doesn't matter how much you supply vanilla. Okay, you can't force people to like vanilla. Make it, you know, make it vanilla chalk chip. I don't know, do something else with it, because you can't just like flood the game with like, let's put like 10 more tanks and no other roles and everyone will play tanks. Like, well, if tank just fundamentally isn't that fun for people because the role just fundamentally isn't that interesting, and I don't just mean in Overwatch, I just mean generally in gaming, tank is always the least picked role. There's not much you can do about that. So I don't know. I just think open queue right now is the best for 6v6 and should probably stay for 6v6.
One thing I'll add here, and then we'll take it to Spilo, is just reflecting on this, and actually the last podcast I did with Marvel Rivals, is that I think another facet here could be the competitiveness of the game, because I think it undoubtedly, like back then, Overwatch was much more casual. Overwatch then was what arguably Marvel Rivals was, and even more, right? It was even more popular, I think, then than what Marvel Rivals is today. And the guys on the Marvel Rivals podcast were saying that it's a mess in terms of the open queue. Like, people pick all kinds of crap for the majority of the ranks, but when you get to the absolute highest end, people stop trolling, right? They're like, okay, well, I want to win this game, so I will flex, I will participate in a somewhat sane comp. And I wonder if that's a facet taking place here in Overwatch, where it's like, now we're going back to 66, but the community overall who are playing are much more competitive, right? They're much more invested in the game. They're not just someone logging on to be like, I just want to play. I don't give a shit what's going to happen. I don't give a shit like what you guys are picking. I'm just going to pick my hero. Fuck you. Right? And that's kind of what we see a little bit in Marvel.
Can I chime in on that?
Right? Yeah, go ahead.
Extremely quick. I think that has more to do with the age of the game than the type of people that play the game. Now, I will say, I'm not going to dive super deep into Marvel versus Overwatch here, but like, yes, Marvel a more casual game? Yes, but it's not so much more casual that like you just get like people that just have zero clue playing the game all the time, maybe in the super low ranks. But the point I'm trying to make here, and I'll make it super quick, is that because Overwatch is an older game, you have a more mature player base that's played through the game. Now, do we still get people that come into Overwatch that will just like not give a crap at all and pick whatever and just do whatever they want if they're extremely new to the game? But anyone that's stuck with the game for a reasonable amount of time, the game is more figured out. Everyone knows to some degree what you're supposed to do in this game. Not only is the player base more mature in the actual age sense, but it's matured in the sense of like the game is more solved. And because the game is more solved, there are more distinctions of this is the correct way to play the game and these are the incorrect ways to play the game. And when your game is new and novel, those things just aren't as obvious. Obviously, if you're an experienced player, if you're an Overwatch experienced player going to Marvel, you reach a higher rank, those things are intrinsically just coming towards you from a knowledge side because you just know that from experience. But if you're like a newer player and you don't know what you're supposed to do, then yeah, you're just it's gonna be chaos in Marvel Rivals, obviously. And so this is why I go back to the point of like, because we've been conditioned to play role queue for so many years for the average player base, they now have a better knowledge and understanding of what they're supposed to do, even in an open queue situation. And Marvel, because it's so new, it's not gonna have that. You have to like have enough time and conditioning of the average player base to get to that level. So I think it's just a time factor there.
All right, I'm going to take it to Spilo next. Spilo, give your thoughts. I'm just going to go to the bathroom, but I can hear, so go ahead and tell me what you think.
I think there's like 2 points here I kind of want to talk about, both of which we talked a great deal about, which is kind of the open queue format and, you know, whether it's better or worse. I think unquestionably the thing that's a bit overrated, as Avril touched on, is the compositional variety and the flexibility. It's something that kind of poked at with Rivals a few months back, where everyone's like, well, Rivals needs open queue because you can like express your creativity, but ultimately it's just 2-2-2 and it will be 90% of the time. And the situations when it's not 2-2, it's really toxic. So I think like it's an interesting thing for a hero pool standpoint, as you were saying, Hawk, where it's like you have a Kiriko Diva pool, right? Like that's weird. That's something that you can really do in an open queue format. But I don't think that is super important. What I think is underrated, which we've talked about, but I think really, really is underrated, is queue times. And I think the Marvel Rival development has kind of proven that, is that people will even willingly put up with the garbage matchmaking that is Marvel Rivals in the rank system for an instant queue. They just don't care. Like people, it's better for content because you're not staring at a queue time. It's better for the player. It's better for engagement. It's just everything that can possibly be said about short queue times. Amplify that by 10 times. It's not important enough, which is tough, right? Because we all love the we want the perfect matchmaking, perfect this and that, but ultimately long queue times it kills games. It just kills games. It doesn't look good for optics. It doesn't look good for streams. It's just terrible, and it especially is harmful from a content perspective because the people that suffer from longer queue times are the people that are doing the content, right? So you guys are the higher ranked players, and you're suffering from that. So the reason why I think this whole open queue format thing is awkward is because we have a little bit of a survivorship bias where you notice there's like a very high correlation. And I know this because I've spent so much time with the plats, coaching plats, working with plats, talking with gold players, right? And there's a very strong correlation between higher ranked players and a favorable opinion on open queue and lower ranked players in a hostile relationship with open queue. And it's because you described it, SVV, with Marvel Rivals, you don't really experience the downsides of open queue as much at the highest ranks because people aren't stupid. And so when you go in, you go, like I tune into Samito's YouTube stream, my guy's playing Mantis, you know what I'm saying? Or he's playing freaking, Strange, like whatever is needed. You're going to play DPS whenever you can. And most of the time people are going to let you play Duelist. But what needs to get done gets done. And that kind of mindset is why you're a higher ranked player, right? Gold players don't care that much. Not that they don't care at all, but they don't care as much. Otherwise, they wouldn't be gold. So like, there's this real danger here. Maybe not. Maybe I'm being a little bit facetious, but we have to be really careful about like we're all. I've worked at the highest level. We've all worked or played or coached or whatever at the highest level. But like my experience is not the majority of Overwatch players. You know what I'm saying? Hawk, your experience is not the majority of Overwatch players. And so I think like we could sit here and definitely, but our experiences are limited and they're going to influence our opinion on open queue. I'm not saying it's not possible. Just think that's something we have to be sensitive to. And I think piggybacking off of that, in fact, I think these are very closely correlated, is we do have to look at hero design. Sam, we talked about this a great deal about 5v5 66 hero design is the end all be all, right? Because you talk about when people talk about why 66 is so cancer, we talk about Winston Roadhog. Oh, I hate playing with a Roadhog. What's the problem? Is it the format or is it freaking Roadhog? When people talk about solo tank and 5v5, is it the format? Maybe, but Malga's Malga. You put Malga in 66, he sucks in 66 too. He's terrible, right? And I think that's kind of the problem here is that when we talk about hero design, you have to be really attentive to what heroes feel good in 5v5, what heroes feel good in 66, and you'll often find a very close correlation between a lot of them. That's not always true. We talked about the off tank and how off tank doesn't exist in 5v5, but tell you what, tanks that those Junker Queens, those hazards feel good in 66, they feel good in 5v5, and that's consistently across the board there. And so I think like the reason why that is actually can be very closely correlated to OpenQ, and careful, this is where I was cooking all of this, right? The real problem with OpenQ is that one of the things that people talk of is like having the 4 Moira Mercy mates. I made a tweet about it yesterday. Got to a game, Insta-lock Mercy, Insta-lock Lifeweaver, Insta-lock Moira. I'm like, all right, well, triple support's good, just not those supports, right? And the problem is I can't ask them to swap because what can a Moira player play? What can a Mercy player play?
Well, careful.
Right? And like, right? So
this is him, not me.
But this is a hero design issue because part of the strength of an OpenQ format is your ability to flex and to play different characters as needed. Not a 50,000 hero pool, just a couple different characters, depending on the situation. If you're one-tricking Mercy, you do not have any transferable skills compared to other characters. And the same thing goes for Moira. And the same thing goes for Bastion, and Torbjorn one tricks back in 2018, right? You just have a very niche skill set. I'm not saying that your character is completely devoid of skill necessarily. It's just a very, very niche character without transferable mechanical skills. Mechanics are the most important transferable skill in Overwatch. Nobody says, oh, positioning. Shut up. It's mechanics. And that's the problem. One of the problems with the OpenQ format, and it's why hero design is so important, because if you can design more Kirikos, more Lucios, more hazards, more whatever, fill in the blank, you could play even Juno, right? Like you have a character that does require some level of dynamic positioning, aim, cooldown management. You do those things. You're not going to be a great tank player, but you'll have some familiarity with how to move your crosshair and shoot. And so I think whether we talk about OpenQ or Roll Q or 5.5 or 66, this is why I've always been the hero design guy, because those outliers poison the well for everybody. When everyone thinks about what sucks about 5v5, they think about the Amalgamiers, Season 8. When everyone thinks of what sucks about 66, we think about the Roadhog Diva off-tank attack on Eichenwald first moments, or freaking double shield, right? We think of those hero design outliers that just ruin everybody's opinion of those things. So that's my spiel.
Well, I'll add one as my new tagline. I'll add one quick thing, guys. Is I'll add hazard to that list as well, because I know I can just see the comments from here, guys. Is people say, oh yeah, well hazard was meta for like 5 months, guys. It's like, okay, guys. Hazard is an amazingly designed hero. Hazard. It's an amazingly designed hero, but it doesn't mean that it can't be overpowered. And it being overpowered in meta for a long time has more to do with like the numbers and the raw, like
sustain that I talked about.
The character. Yeah, it's like how much damage or how much what the cooldowns, like the raw stats of the character can be too high, yes, but that doesn't mean the character's poorly designed. So anyone, because I know it's going to come in the comments, people are like, oh yeah, well,
Hazard has the highest brawl, the highest sustain, the highest mobility.
Hazard was just meta for 3 months, guys, and it's like, yes, because it was overtuned. That doesn't mean it's not well designed. A well-designed character can be overtuned. Right? So
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so that's what I just wanted to make sure that people understand that like Hazard is an example of one of the best tank designs in the game, just happened to be overtuned, and those things like we shouldn't we being the Overwatch community, because I know the people on this panel are going to be fine, but it's the people out there that'll listen to this that'll bring it up, because we all know Malga is the real outlier in terms of bad design. Malga is a character that no matter what you do with the guy, fundamentally the design just doesn't allow him to be healthy in the game. So I'm just backing up everything Spilo said, and saving everyone's brain cells later from the deranged Hazard comments that will be there.
To anybody listening to this, don't make the same, I don't want to say mistake that I did, but like don't come to the wrong conclusion, or like make sure you really ask yourself the question, because like when I started playing against the tanks that I hated in 5v5 against 6v6, even like Sigma, Hawk, I like your cat. It's just I just run around over there. But like, don't misconstrue design with like just overall sustain. Because like, correct me if I'm wrong, but when Hazard was like his big meta or whatever, he still had 25% headshot reduction. He still had like the super armor, like the reduced ult charge, like all that stuff. Like I'm telling you guys, there's a reason why I was so irritated at that and so vocal against it, because it is that good regardless of design. So don't like try to play against these characters or these tanks that you hate, like in 6v6 or in 5v5 open queue if you have a custom code for that. But like, don't conflate bad design with giga stats, because they're too, the giga stats actually overpower the healthy design that is the type of character that you want to make.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna call anybody out, but there was a couple of tweets I saw about like, oh, 1 second nerf on Hazard's Leap. Are you serious? And it's like, you guys need to go back and take remedial math. Like,
Well,
I
that matters so
swear,
much.
Yeah.
Like,
1
when they-
second and a 4 second cooldown is.
You remember when they did that to
monstrous.
DPS Doomfist and he was just terrible?
They did that
for,
to
like,
Tank Doom too. They did the same thing to
I-
Tank Doom. I'm like, wow,
I-
like this hero feels so much different now. One
Yeah.
second
I
off the
asked
punch.
Gavin, I think in my Twitch chat at one point, he said his win rate dropped by like 3% off of that 1 second nerf.
Yeah,
something
it's
crazy
yeah.
like that. He got
Yeah.
like, and it's like, you know, and people are like saying, oh, he's brain dead because you could just pick him. Like, guys, it's the same thing as AVRL saying. Like the
You know
difference
why?
between like overtuned versus badly designed. Like people cannot understand the difference, and it leads to so much bad feedback. So much bad feedback.
You know
He
why,
launched
Spilo?
so broken, but
Yeah,
Spilo,
he did.
people say it's not enough of a nerf. You know why? Oh, it's such a bad nerf, guys. Doesn't do anything. You know why? Because 1 is a small number. You forget for the average player out there, for the average Overwatch player there.
Yeah.
But 1 second, 1 is a very small number, Spilo. What you can't
is
count?
true.
1 is the first number when you count. It's 1.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah.
Duh.
Well, they
1,
also
guys. It's a
nerfed
small
his
number.
block. They nerfed his block, and then like a week later or 2 weeks later, they also nerfed his 1 second leap and whatever. And I was like, also, it's like, I don't know. It is what it is. People, it's not a big surprise. But again, I guess that's my point. Is like with the open queue format, it's important to have the character designs like Hazard, because you understand mobility and you understand cooldown management and mechanics and target priority and stuff like that. And so like you don't have. And I'm really picking on Mercy Warrior players, and I do think that those guys are a bit overhated outside of the pro community. But I will say it's like it is really dangerous to have one-dimensional characters without transferable skills. That can kind of keep a thing down. And I think a lot of Mercy players, they don't even necessarily like the fact. Like they would like to use their movement more. But anyway, that's all for today.
that's something I would be very curious to see the data, like separated by rank, separated by
Yeah, Rivals does it.
by like what comps are being played at what rank, like what kind of like games are
That would
being
be
lost
huge.
off spawn.
That would
Like
be
I want to see the trade-off of like role queue and open queue. Are people actually losing more games off spawn open queue, or is it just like a placebo thing?
Yeah.
I will say
Because
the
it could be
matchmaking,
fine.
the matchmaking is a little spotty because they transferred 5v5 like open queue rank in the middle of the season after a rank reset. Like the matchmaking is a little like sus in that way, but I'm very curious like to see how it changes by rank and like what the outcome of that is.
Yeah, I agree, because I think that there's like, and this is the theme I want to bring to the couple other points I want to bring up here, is that there's a lot of like nuance and sometimes contradiction in the same point, which is that like with this Mercy example, it's like you can kind of argue both sides of it, right? You can say what Spilo has just said there, which is that like it's worse in open queue because like, well, partly you have more chances of having more Mercy and Moira mains, right? Like so you can end up with 4. In rogue, you can end up with 2 worst. So, okay, you have Mercy Moira, it's a bad backline, but hey, you only had 2 of them. They're not 4 of them. You could also make the other argument, though, and say, well, if they're not like a pure one trick, the likelihood that they have a transferable hero somewhere else is greater in open queue, right? It's like maybe they play a little bit of diva. Like they may not play.
Hero.
Right, exactly.
Some people just played the character, and that is.
Well, that's what I'm
it.
saying. If they're not a pure one trick, right? If they're like a Mercy player who does play tank sometimes and will play, I don't know, Reinhardt sometimes, the chance that they will actually flex to something else to make the game work is potentially there in open queue, as is the chance that you can make a really bad hero work more in theory. In theory, you could say, oh, we have a Mercy and a Moira player. Let's play 3 DPS or whatever. Like we have a Mercy player. Let's play 3 DPS so that she can bounce around more and that leans into the Mercies. But of course, is that really happening in any meaningful way? Unlikely. We don't know. This, as Hawk said, we really don't know the data. The devs may know the data of like, this is what's happening here and there. And this I'll lead to the other point that I want to ask you guys about as well, is that this is almost the paradox of the open queue, role queue, going back to the thing, the original question, going back to the Marvel Rivals comparison. Because we're kind of saying simultaneously it's better for the casuals and worse for the casuals, right? It's like, it's better for the casuals because they don't want to think too hard about what they're playing. They just want to log on and play the hero, and that helps with queue times. But we're also saying actually that creates wonky comps that makes it worse for the casual, right? So it's like we can't quite marry the two. It's like, well, do they want to just play whatever they want? And I think the way I would summarize it, and then I'm going to take it to you guys, like I remember when the 5v5 6v6 switch happened, one of the most popular tweets I ever made was like something along the, I can't remember, I'm going to have to paraphrase it now, but it's something along the lines of everyone loves two tanks until you have to be one of the people picking the two tanks. And I feel like that's how it is with like flexing in open queue, right? It's like everyone loves open queue until they're the one who has to flex off the thing they want to play.
Yeah,
and so it's like this weird paradox.
Like, who wants to play? Who wants two tanks? Everyone puts their hands up. Who wants to play tank? No one puts their hands up. That's that meme.
I think you're more likely to get it though in open queue than you would be in roll queue because people, you go back to the ice cream example. If I'm already going to get ice cream, might as well get something while I'm there. You know what I mean? Like if I'm trying to win the game, I'm going to flex to try to win the game. I'm not just going to run down the game. Maybe in quick place is a problem, but if you are making people specifically go get one flavor ice cream, and they're going to be upset when they have to do it, but I don't know how to describe in this analogy, but like
if
you're
you're
some guy
playing the right role,
Yeah,
is it a better experience that they are like, all right, fine, I'll try it, and it's like actually it's not that bad, it's kind of fun, or is it more like, I'm always playing the role that I don't want to play because he's brain dead?
You know what it is,
gold 2
Spilo?
DPS players.
Do you guys remember when you were a kid and
No.
there was that one time where everyone's like, you're not going to like Brussels sprouts, but then your mom tells you it's popcorn and then you eat it anyway, and then it's actually good? And now I like Brussels sprouts. So
That's probably the worst analogy you probably could have come up with. I think you just
listen, I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
You're telling this to the big kale conspiracy man. Like it is not going to fly.
Big Kale, you're compromised, buddy. Big Kale makes all health. Big Brussels sprouts, big kale, and big salsa water. You got to watch out for those three, man.
I'm compromised. I'm gonna start. Never mind. Actually, too far.
Oh, last point. One thing I almost forgot. Sorry. Queue times, big stuff for high rank, not big stuff for low rank. You kind of get what I'm saying? So like there's this weird dynamism where it's like, how much is like the goal player care about the open queue being insta queue when it's already basically insta queue anyway? So it's like, dude, again, like, do they really care that much? I'm asking the uncomfortable questions that we don't have the answers to. And to back up Hawk's point, this is why we need public stats, because you can know how often 222 is picked. Like they know it. Rivals
and to add on
why don't we have it?
To talk placebo and stuff, one, I agree 100%. Number two, one thing I think we've learned, I guess, from this conditioning, or like going really, if there's one thing Overwatch has done, it's learned lessons for sure. 100%. Yeah. Like Overwatch has, I think, gone around the block on this stuff a lot more than some of the other games out there. But where some people say, oh, well, we didn't get 2 tanks, so we lost the game. Well, what's the alternative, right? And there's a lot of times where we've now gone to the alternative in 5v5 where it's like, okay, well, now my one tank that I waited 10 minutes for this game is picking Roadhog and not swapping. So now, like, I could have gotten a whole new game. So, like, that's also something. So what I've realized is that it's unsolvable. You can never like the point to go to roll queue, and this is where I'm at right now. I'm still open to changing my mind, but the point to go to roll lock, specifically 222, was, hey, we want to ensure higher quality matches, consistently. But now I'm asking myself, at least like in 5v5 roll lock, it's like, okay, well, are these matches like actually that much higher quality for how much I'm waiting, right?
Wait. So you're saying maybe format isn't always the most important thing ever?
Yeah. There's a lot more to it. Turns out there's a lot of ingredients that go into the cake, baby. But so I don't know, but I've started to get to the point where it's like, is it? And that might be because I'm not playing as seriously anymore, and I'm much more of a casual now than I am, die hard, get on, grind ranked every day, with just the gray hairs coming in. But I don't know. That's another alternative to think about. It's like, okay, well, what are you asking for, right? And I think a lot of those average ranked players, like a lot of the times, and even high rank, I think it's true for everybody. It might actually be a placebo. Like, what is your alternative is what you have to ask. And to me, like from what I've seen in the results, I can't say that it's like that much more worth. Like 8, like the guys, did y'all see my quick play queue times when I got on to try perks? I was in 12-minute quick play queues. I was in 12-minute consistent, like 12 plus. Like, I'm just like, yo, I actually I like this update. Like I want to try and play it, but like ever since Overwatch 2 came out, I cannot play quick play. But that's a different tangent, I suppose.
So, I'll chime in. I think like the reason you have to contend with the fact that you need a seamless experience such that if a player moves through the ranks or improves the MMR, even if you don't play ranked, you talked about quick play there, your MMR still does matter, for better or
Yeah.
worse. And your queue times will be impacted because you might have a super high quick play MMR. This guy's a quick play warlord, by the way. He's just this quick play
I
MMR so
haven't
damn
played.
high.
I haven't played in 2
Uh,
years.
But the point I'm trying to make here is that like you can't have like, oh, you know, it's roll queue for gold until diamond, and then it's suddenly open queue from like masters up.
Yeah.
That wouldn't work either. So you have to pick one system. But then, okay, well, if queue times are a massive issue for the higher ranks, you're gonna have to go towards open queue, and the reason being that, you know, once players reach that level, you could also argue, by the way, your like high ranked players are your most hardcore players, which I would be interested to know stat wise if they will never release this for obvious reason. If there's a correlation between higher rank and purchasing more in the game because they're more hardcore and invested in the game, right? I don't know if there's a correlation there. There could be. I don't know. But you need to contend with the fact that like if a player actually moves through the rankings and improves in the game and eventually reaches a higher rank, the queue times are going to suffer. So what are you going to do about that? And open queue is kind of like the solution to that. Like you have to contend with the fact that open queue might just be required to make high ranks playable in that kind of way. So, yeah. But to answer SVB's original question, it's like, you know, is it? We're saying that it's both good and bad for the average player, but I think it is both good and bad for the average player, and those things are not mutually exclusive. They're both true at the same time. Yes.
Yeah, it is the funny paradox. Here's another little nuance I'm going to add, and I want to throw it to Hawk, which is that
Guys, we're so old. All this nuance. Holy crap.
then another facet of what I think Sam, you mentioned that like you feel worse like queuing 10 minutes and then you're getting a game that you're like, this is a wash. Yeah. Overwatch has actually reduced its average game length, right? This is like a thing that's hard to remember consciously until you're like, oh wait, like they've been making effort to like make sure that each game is less time, which makes
I know, like,
which makes open queue potentially more appealing, right? Because it's like those games where it's 4 DPS, they are less of your time. Like I'm thinking of I've been grinding a lot of Dota.
Is this proven, by the way? Is it proven that the games are shorter now?
Well, they've like made specific changes
compared to win. Like, are you
Flashpoint
talking
and
like
push are both shorter modes? Like than the other modes, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, if you're talking like OG Overwatch, I mean, Koth used to be 5 rounds. So like, give me a ballpark. On
yeah,
that
like
so
when they launched, when we had the original open queue, like everything was much longer, right? It was like multiple overtimes, and you know, it was like every mode had like back and forth.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like Flashpoint, push. They're like and Clash. They're like singular round, right? Like there's no like attack defense. There's no like 3 rounds like in Koth. It's like you go 5 minutes. And then you're done.
It's way more Koth-like with not 5 rounds. Sure.
Yeah, it's like there's no interruptions in between the game either, right? It's like there's no like we're swapping sides. So here's another minute where you just literally in the spawn room waiting, right? It's like it's all like go play, and potentially you can end the game in like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, right? Like push. We've all been in like a game that ends in like 3 minutes, and theoretically you could argue that about 2CP as well. But anyways, the point being, like, I compare to Dota sometimes, where it's like I legit frequently play like hour-long games, and if someone's like trolling with their pick in that game, it feels awful. It feels awful because you're like, you know, it's going to take at least half an hour to lock this game up, especially if you want to try, right? Some people just throw in the towel 15 minutes and they're like, fuck this, I want out, end the game. Like they're in chat, they're like, end game now, I'm not going to defend, I'm AFK in jungle, just end the game. But when you're playing for like half an hour, 45 minutes, and you're trying, and there's a guy on your team who picked, I won't go into the detail, but let's say someone picked Reinhardt on support, and you're like, this guy's trolling, fuck this guy, like he isn't going to be able to, how's he going to heal me, right? That feels worse. But when you're like 8 minutes, I think there's potentially more room to just say, whatever, we had a bad comp one game, go next. Yeah. Hawk, I'm going to take it to you next. How do you feel about this whole open queue, roll queue paradox? Like where would it sit right now?
I'd like to see them try 66 roll queue. From the playtest, I remember, I think it was Morgan he tweeted. I don't remember exactly tweeted. He said that the average from the playtest in like December, the average queue time was like 3 minutes on all rolls for the most of the playtest, and like that's pretty interesting. Like, wow, that's not as high as I thought it would be. I'm curious if it would be different now. I think if they were really devious next season, they would. Oh my god, people are gonna hate this. You remove 5v5 roll queue or 6v6 roll queue, and then you keep 5v5 open queue. You pretty much do the reverse. oh my god, people would hate that. But I think it'd be very, very interesting to see if, well, do people just click on the left side mode? Will people just click 6v6 and they don't give a hell? They don't give a damn like whether or not they're playing it or not. And like, you know, are the queue times an issue? Like I think that could be a good experiment. But I'm completely fine with open queue. I think we as a community and as like a hero shooter player, or even just like a team based competitive player, you're going to get games in these competitive games that are just unwinnable. And if the trade-offs aren't there, like if they're not like, wow, you're getting more competitive games by, I guess, significant margin in a role queue environment, then like, what is the point? Like, it's not worth the queue times for any rank. So yeah, I think some games some games are always going to be unwinnable. You can't just always blame your team. Sometimes you can. Sometimes blame the matchmaker. But like, some games are just meant to be unwinnable. Some games are going to be meant to spawn, like lost off spawn in any game, in any genre. When you have a team and you have,
So you're saying we need engagement-based matchmaking like Marvel? I'm kidding. I'm so joking, guys.
Is that what it is?
I'm
Is that why
extremely
it's such a
joking.
clown
Somebody
fiesta,
pick him.
dude? Like,
Yes, bro. You don't know that, Sam? Come on, man.
dude,
Marvel
It's
has
you gain more than you lose until you're like Celestial.
not even that. Like there's legalized boosting in that game. Like say you're playing with a player that's like a full rank below you, they gain more to catch up to the players that are higher in the stack. So you players that like are just
Legal
climbing.
boosting.
Yeah, it's like legalized
also-
boosting. Like you just
Yeah.
climb faster by playing with players that are higher than you, and you might be getting carried, you might not be, but you can do that for all the way up, all the way up. You can do that.
There's performance-based SR as well, so like you can stat boost, and they actually buffed that in the recent patch. I mean, you saw it.
That's awful. That is
So
complete
you
troll.
can heal bot even harder and just like perma, like dive
Dude,
heroes or like anything that's indirect value and not raw damage healing your limbs is screwed.
This
oh,
actually
that
leads,
makes a lot of sense.
Well, this is
It's
great
like they have
'cause
ironically,
Go ahead,
real
Dustin,
quick,
go
SVB, they have the gold medal problem where I'll have some dudes soaking damage and then being like,
Yeah.
I'm MVP. I'm like, you're you're
It's
running
by
down mid.
design. It's by design. That entire game
Yeah,
is by
I
design.
I've
believe
opened a
that
can of worms, guys.
100%.
I've opened
No,
a
I
can
mean
of
this
worms.
is perfect
We'll
because
avoid
actually
it.
the next topic I was going to bring us on to was the comparisons and the reflections with Marvel Rival, right? Because we've kind of talked about how we reflect on our own time within Overwatch in the last 18 months or so. But now we actually have, we kind of said this once we heard what Marvel Rivals was going to be, that it was going to be 6v6 open queue. We're going to get a great chance to see someone else experiment with the same problems Overwatch had. And we've had that now. We've had Marvel Rivals out for a little while. And we've presumably all watched and seen like, okay, this is what they're doing. This is how it's going down. Obviously, it's not conclusive, but how do you reflect on the fact that Marvel Rivals is 6v6 open queue with hero bans? What is that? What are some of the things that you're like, yeah, I anticipated that problem? And what are some of the things that you're like, oh, I didn't anticipate this would be a problem? And how does it come back to Overwatch? Let's go with AVRL. AVRL, you started the can of worms, so we'll take it to you.
You should let Spilo go because he's the guy that made a brilliant video, by the way, about why he left Marvel. And you're welcome, dude. I'm here batting for you. Don't worry about it.
Go ahead then, Spilo.
He paid me for the promotion, just to be clear. Hashtag ad.
Sure,
So
sure.
Spilo is
that's a
I
great
think he'll have the
plug.
best opening
Shills
thanks for this.
Blizzard, he shills
Go-
for me. Yeah,
Go
it's
watch
great.
go watch that video. Go watch all these guys' videos right now if you're listening to podcasts.
I think
But
Flash
Spilo,
is reacting to it.
do you wanna summarize maybe then that video and then tell us about the
yeah.
lessons?
I mean, I guess for me, it's like, let's focus on like what actually pertains to our discussion now. Because if you just want to watch the video, just watch the video of why. But I think the big thing is, one of the big ones is bans, right? And what Rivals did really well with bans and with giving, and they're also extending the bans, I think, now to gold, Samito, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like they're extending that ownership to all the way to the gold ranks, which I think is really smart. Bronze is kind of an irrelevant rank. Everyone starts in bronze if you play at all. Even if you're actually a bronze player, you'll get the gold. So basically, anybody can have access to bans. Anybody can have access to controlling the lobby, to a feeling of autonomy. And I think that's really important. And definitely a lesson that was chewed along because Rivals did it. I'm sure it was cooking prior to that, but like Rivals doing it and doing it so successfully within the open queue format was a huge success. And I think that it definitely, I'm not saying that we need to retouch on all the topics that we've talked about, but if you think about the open queue discussion, if you think about enabler tanks, having that really crappy tank, Winston Roadhog, right? Like if I'm picking Winston, I'm banning Roadhog, my friends. Not just because I don't want to play versus Roadhog, because I don't want the jackass next to me to pick Roadhog, right? Like, so there is a lot of autonomy within 66 that is enabled, like those worst case scenarios, like no offense, Mercy Moira, right? We talked about that. If we could ban those son of a guns, right? We had this discussion. I was doing some the ban project earlier in my stream. I was like, if I'm picking Winston, I'm banning Moira. I'm banning Ediari, right? I don't want to play with somebody on my team on that character, and that's going to be in the game. So is that going to, fix all of our issues with OpenQ or 66 or 5v5 or whatever? Probably not, but it is a really important variable that could really improve the quality of those matches and maybe helps, shave off some of those rough edges. And I think Rivals really started that. I certainly put it in the public light, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. Within the OpenQ format, like what Rivals did with OpenQ, I really don't know. I basically read nonstop complaints about OpenQ and Rivals on Reddit and Twitter. But when I played Rivals, and I had like 150 hours on it, I didn't have that many games that were ruined by it. I think for the most part, Sam, your experience is probably similar. It wasn't really much of an issue. It was like we had some 4 DPS games, we had some solo support games, we had solo tank games, but it was okay. More of my issues were less to do with the OpenQ format, I think, with Rivals, and more to do with the game design outside of that. So I think it was honestly fine. Beyond that, I think that's for the most part, I think that's mostly it, right? I think the last lesson that I kind of talk more in detail at in the video is just about how Rivals really proved that even for a more beginner casual game, having characters with larger kits is not a bad thing. Skill is relative, so if you pick up a game and you don't understand what half the buttons do, it doesn't matter. You can still play Rivals. Freaking play Rivals. Like, I've got a ton of casual friends playing sports. All they do is they play NBA 2K and freaking Madden fill in the blank, whatever generic game. They've never touched a shooter in their life since like 2009 with Modern Warfare 2. But they're freaking loving Rivals, right? And they don't understand what half the buttons do, but they just love it, right? And so like that to me was always something that I believed in. That like I think not 75 button kits necessarily, but dynamic kits, kits where you can do offensive or defensive or mobility or this and that. And I think like kits like Magic, right? And I think they did a really good job proving that like even for a quote unquote more casual game, you can have kits that function more. And I think the Overwatch team has also learned that lesson with Hazard, with Juno, even with kits we got Freya right now. Like she doesn't have that many buttons, but her buttons do different things, and you got to kind of think, do I want to use the lunge for mobility? Do I want to use it for a reload? Should I be spamming my primary fire? Should I be scoping in? Like, how do I manage? And I think like that kind of thinking is like what makes characters so engaging at both a beginner and a high level. And I think Rivals really proved that, hey, this can work. We don't have to have single button characters anymore in Overwatch. So that's my 2 cents.
Totally fair. While we're on the positive, I'll take it to Sam, and then I think the negatives I'm gonna get from AVRL and Hawk potentially about what are the negative lessons from Marvel Rivals.
I would like to hear if Sam has any negatives too. Actually, he should give.
Oh,
both.
I do. Oh, I can pinky fucking promise you that I do. Holy shit. Okay. Oh my goodness.
Well, go positive for now, and then once these guys give some negatives, you can come back and be like, oh yeah, and another thing.
Yeah. So let's start with the positives. I think the positives is that this is just the best case. We were right about it being the best case scenario for us at home. We're able to learn twice the lessons, twice as fast, and these games have clearly forced each other to be better. Obviously, OpenQ I think what Rivals did better than anyone else has done this genre is format and iteration. 100%, as well as outlandish hero designs. My opinion on crazy hero designs has actually completely changed post Rivals. I've realized that like there was so much like poison in the well of like my thought process, I guess, that really stemmed from like how outrageous the sustain was on a single target tank in Overwatch 2. It wasn't necessarily the Overwatch 2 designs, but more so like the sustain on top of them just pushed it way past a breakpoint. If you take that sustain back, you can have crazy designs. Things like Loki, while he is very, very annoying, is very, very fun and very, very cool. Like I think Overwatch can do more designs like that. More crazy stuff. I thought about like, okay, do I actually hate play for you abilities in Overwatch? No, I played DPS Doomfist forever, and he was a cornball character, but he was so outlandish, fun, and unique that I could log on every day and play Doomfist and have a ton of fun. Call me Get Quaked On, who, by the way, somehow still has clips of him doing rollouts from like it's insane. This guy has clips from 2019. He's still posting montages of it. People are dogging on. I'm like, guys, if you're dogging on someone for Twitter for having clip dumps that go like that far back, like, dude, that's crazy. Just
Yes, and whatever you think about his gameplay, it's like you gotta commend this man's organization
appreciate the
skills
art.
to
Yeah, I
have
know.
like
It's
a
art.
sorted archive from 2019 and the sheer
Honestly,
hard drive space. The hard drive
It could be like
space?
6-7 hours straight of highlights. I think if you chain that back to back, man, like no shot.
He's
Insane.
in chat right now, by the way. Shout
Yeah,
out to
he's
Quick
in chat right now. He's laughing and he says, "I got 4,000 plus clips of DPS Doomfist." So
He's deploying right now in the classic mode. So anytime there's a classic mode, he's getting some new supply.
Dude, I get my updates for Overwatch of him in the April Fool's mode. He's like, I'm playing Iron Fist, and he's going around punching it. It's so
Yeah,
funny.
he,
But,
like Overwatch Classic, I was like 5 players, and it's get quicked on playing him every lobby. Can you imagine that poor plat player just wants to play Classic, and every lobby he's playing versus get quicked? I'm
he's
like,
"Oh, it's this
dude, are
fucking
you
guy
serious?
again. It's this
Doom was
fucking
not
guy."
that good. The port of Doom, he was not that good. Like his
No,
slam does
Mercy
not
was
behave in
also
the same
terrible.
ways.
Mercy was terrible too.
so funny. Anyway, back to it. Jesus, I almost okay. Back to it. But yeah, no, it's like those outlandish designs, like those actually make people want to play the unique stuff. Like lean into it. Like again, like the hero shooter genre. It's not McDonald's. It's a steakhouse, right? Like Call of Duty's McDonald's. I could go for a Big Mac and some fries right now, or I could go for a steak. It doesn't really matter. I'll eat it all. I don't care. With a side of Brussels sprouts. Spilo.
This is
big
completely
kale.
unrelated to the discussion, actually.
Way out of line.
so yeah, no, I think that's like some of the positives. As broken as some of that stuff is, it's also like really, really fun. Bans, man. Oh my God. I cannot believe I was not on the bans train. I think bans would have solved like 80% of Overwatch's biggest issues throughout its life that caused more product, caused the snowball. I think, man, the bans they just nailed. So format, bans, they absolutely nailed. I think their art style is actually really underrated. People say it's not great. It kind of feels like a comic book. Like, and believe it or not, guys, I actually like third person. I can't believe that I'm saying that. I actually really enjoy the third person. I think it was a very smart design decision for them to do that.
Promise you, Rivals is influence Stadium in that regard. You cannot convince me otherwise.
Well, and if you and again, like there were massive videos, like some of the biggest videos of 2020 were like Overwatch but in third person, which is like, you know, like if you go back and look, like they're there, like they have million, like this is back when like Overwatch videos would still, like they get decent views now, but like that video got like 2 million views. Like it was, you know, crazy. So I think third person they nailed. I think I actually like destroyable environments. I don't like the rebuilding environments. I think that's something that they nailed as well. But I love the competition they brought to the genre. I love how they've smashed. They've destroyed narratives that we all thought were true. And in my opinion, about hey, like people only want to play DPS. I think Rivals and Overwatch 2 have both proven that to be incorrect. So I think that opens up design to be way more outlandish, fun, and crazy. And it's really honestly made me rethink numerous of my stances that I was like, listen, like here's the results. Like how could I argue with the results? But it's completely knocked everything on its back, and it's made me reevaluate the way that I approach like hero design, the way that I see an ability and I think, oh, that's broken. Like it's helped me like really unravel the knot, which is what I think we all kind of needed. I think that Blizzard benefits from this a lot. I think creators benefit from this a lot because we did have like a very rugged line of thinking when it comes to a lot of these things, and there wasn't much room to expand, and somebody just had to come blow it all up and start us over. And I think that's what Rivals has done. It's been the great reset of this genre, which we really, really needed. Now, as for bad things that Rivals has done, the rank system sucks. It's not a competitive game. I've said this from the very beginning. I don't think it's a serious competitive game. And I think you are making a mistake if you take it seriously. It's very clearly not what they're going for. You could argue the super high volume is also bad. I think it's good as a content creator because I'm trying not to go into that game with a serious mindset. I think Overwatch, I think the hero shooter genre is a steakhouse compared to McDonald's for the rest of games. But when you get into the hero shooter genre, Overwatch is way more refined, has years more polish on it than Rivals does, way better optimization, way better game engine, you know, just a lot of those things are much better. I don't think Rivals is a very serious game. I think it's meant to be casual in the same way that the Minecraft movie just blew up. And is the Minecraft movie a great movie? Probably not, but it's intentionally trying to be satirical in a lot of different ways. And that's why kids are throwing popcorn all over the damn theater, and it did 150 million a box office in the week, right? You know, that's just what it is. And that's kind of what Rivals is. So you kind of have to understand the product. But I think really what I'm the most happy about is that we as creators and players are really going to win because these games are going to make each other better. And I actually think that come this summer when Overwatch implement, like if Rivals did not come out and succeed with bans and all of this stuff the way they did, Overwatch wouldn't be doing it. I don't think it would happen. It could have happened all these years, right? That's just like a number. And we could say, oh, well, they're going to, but it didn't, right? Like there's pressure from that came in because of that. And again, double science experiments. Both of those dev teams are going to be winning. All ships rise with the tide. So I'll take both experiments. I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because for years, as I played Overwatch 2, I was kind of like, oh man, I really wish we would do something more crazy. Like, I wish we would add customizability, or I wish we would add bans. And then I left. And then within like a year of me leaving, it's like they're like, oh, we added perks into the base game. Not even just like as we threw it into the fucking game. We're adding bans. We added 6v6. We experimented they went crazy. And then you have to think that that's down to Marvel Rivals, right? Like you have to think that comes from the fact that I feel like they're almost both forced and liberated at the same time. Like forced in the sense that there's this strong competitor taking away your player base, but also it's like you're liberated because, well, if they're gonna take our players anyways, we may as well fucking throw some shit around, see what sticks, right? Like be like what's happening. So, Gavin and sorry, I was gonna say Gavin. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say a lot of I think like perks. I think Stadium. I think the things have been in development a long time. I think that is also a reflection of the people that they have on the development team post Overwatch 2. Like you get Aaron Keller. I think Aaron Keller, I see him as much more receptive to feedback and much more willing to experiment. I think Alec Dawson coming in, even from Hearthstone, right? Guy's just going to throw crap at a wall. He's much more willing to try and experiment with things and then roll things back when they don't work. And I think that in contrast to what Overwatch had, is really important. So while I agree, I think that this stuff was in development for a much longer time. I think it's stuff like bans that I think that Rivals specifically pushed. I do think like whether it's like the third person shift with Stadium, like whether that's first or third, I think people are like, oh wow, people like looking at skins, right? So we should definitely have that option in there.
Yeah.
And certainly, like you said, committing to that vision. It was like, okay, yeah, this is the right move. Let's keep going that way. Because I just think that's the modern gaming base as a whole. Is like just being more experimental and so on. People, because we're in a live service model age right now. Like you have to introduce new shinies occasionally, otherwise, you have difficulties.
Yeah, and it is a good point to bring up. I think that just to avoid confusion or whatever the right word is, that like, yeah, a lot of people think that some of these very big scale projects could be turned around in like a week. Like, oh, well, Marvel Rivals announced this, Overwatch announced this. That's not true. That part's not true. As you said, like you can't design an entire system in like a month. So people are very mistaken about that.
You can't. They clearly copied it.
Well, this reminds me like there's like I think a Reddit post that's really blown up, which is like in regards to the Nintendo Switch thing and like the whole tariffs to America. And some guy was like, "Come on now, how long would it take Nintendo Switch to move their operations over to Ohio? 2 to 3 months?" And it's like, oh my god, my guy, like it's
people
like
just don't know these things, man.
People just don't understand. But sticking to the topic,
they tend to.
Go ahead, Avril. Finish your thought.
They tend to. This is part of the topic. So, and by the way, let me just close the book on one thing, because I think some viewers in the future might be like, wait, what did Gavin say? Did he say something really important? He said we were actually just not adding features because SVB was their kappa. True. Big true, my man. Shout outs to Gavin. My favorite ones of that kind of commentary as well, Sam, is people like then shifting the goalposts. Like, oh yeah, well, Marvel had its beta, several months before. It's like, oh yeah, that must have been it. It's like, and then they shift the goalposts. It's like, oh well, even if it had nothing to do with the beta, they're devs and they just know these things. They just knew Marvel was in development. Years in behind the scenes and all this kind of stuff. It's like, dude, how far are we going to shift the goalposts? Actually, it's getting to the point of ridiculousness, where it's just like every dev just knows, like, oh yeah, so 2 years ago when Marvel Rivals was in development, actually longer than that, Overwatch was like this, they're just shitting themselves, scrambling, like, Aaron Keller. That's, by the way, this is why Jeff Kaplan left, because he was scared of Marvel Rivals, guys, because he knew 5 years ago. By the way, yeah, let's just keep the conspiracy going. Just Aaron Keller's just pulling his hair out Homer Simpson style, because he's just like, oh, I'm panicking about Marvel Rivals, guys. Oh my god. It's like, come on, guys, let's be fucking for real 1 second. Some of the people out there are just like deranged in terms of like how much they will just like, they just refuse to accept any criticism of Marvel. And this is like a really tough thing, because I want to like both, and I do like both games. I like you, Sam. I can see the value in both games. I think both games existing is exactly what we needed. We need two games to sort of be making maybe different mistakes and doing different things well and teaching each other lessons. And Overwatch is going to find some lessons out of Marvel already has, and the opposite may be true. Like, I can't wait for the day that Marvel's like, you know what? We're going to do perks as well. And then let's see how many Marvel players
Or how
are
about a
willing to...
heal passive? How about a heal, please?
Yeah. And
The
then,
entire game is copied over.
Shout out
like, I don't know
Paladins,
why.
bro. It's so
Yeah,
funny. And
Paul,
by the
that's-
way, Avril, to add on, like, and I saw some of this too when I talked about the Marvel Rivals Season 1 patch was bad. Like, Cloak and Dagger breaking the game was bad. Them buffing Rocket to burst heal for Season 2 is bad. Like, it's going to break shit. But bans come in and let you mitigate it. But nobody's even willing to, like, talk about that over there yet. But yeah, except for the pro players. Back to you.
That's part of the main problem is, like, I like the game, but I dislike the audience. Does that make sense? Like, the player base is just, and I should be careful here because it's not all of them. It's probably just the deranged terminally online ones that I see on Twitter all the time and sometimes on Reddit. So it maybe, I don't know. I would benefit of the doubt. I hope it's not in the majority of the player base. Probably the majority of the player base don't spend that much time on social media talking about the game. They do their 95, they play the game, they don't bother posting about it online. Okay, that's what I want to believe that the majority of people are doing. You know, that I say that's my cope to save my sanity. Otherwise, I'm just gonna just hate humanity. So I'm just gonna avoid doing that. But yeah, it's like I wish people would be more willing to have constructive conversations about what Marvel actually needs to improve on, because otherwise the community is just like sabotaging their own game. It's like an Emperor's New Clothes situation where I feel like from day one, and I don't dislike the game, but I feel like just because I'm one of the only people that's willing to say anything negative about it, people just associate, oh, that man, he just hates this game. It's like, that's not even true. Dude, I've even worked for them. People call me a shill for Blizzard. It's like, dude, I've actually been hired by him. I've done a Marvel Rivals broadcast on the official broadcast at this rate. It's like, brother, I've been paid by all these companies. It doesn't matter. Content creators literally get paid by Marvel as well. It's like, guys, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, point I'm trying to make here is people that actually want Marvel to be a successful game need to be a little bit more receptive to feedback and criticism, because just blindly defending it Emperor's New Clothes style, where like if you have working eyeballs, you can see dick and balls out, the Emperor's just naked. And then you just have these like Marvel fanboys like, no, he's clearly wearing clothes. Like, dude, you need to just stop blindly defending this game out of hatred for it. I get it. You play this game because you hate Overwatch. I get it. Just like, if you actually want Marvel to be a good game, though, you need to be open to the fact that there are some things the game doesn't do well, and that it needs to be fixed. The engine UE5, that situation is like one of the most egregious. The fact that, I don't know, I think this is still true. Hope maybe in the future they'll end up fixing this. Apparently, it's not a very easy fix. Apparently, it's a very difficult fix if they can even fix it. The fact that your performance on your computer or whatever you're playing on, FPS-wise, actually impacts the amount of range you get on a dash and how quickly you can attack and this kind of crap. It's like, dude, there are literal competitive integrity issues based on the performance of your like PC. If you don't have a good enough graphics card or something, you're just getting not enough frames. And because the game is poorly optimized, you're going to get less frames than you probably would in any other game, particularly a game like Overwatch, which is super well optimized. You're just going to get like performance-based issues. That's not even just FPS lag. You literally like don't dash as far and you will deal less DPS because you have less FPS. How is that fair? Like, that's ridiculous to exist in a game in 2025. It's absolutely ridiculous that's a thing at all. That should be like, people should be up in arms about that. People should be like really fucking mad. I know that if that happened in Overwatch, people would be extreme. The torches would be out, dude. The tiki torches would be out in front of Irvine PlayStation, dude. It would be a disaster. And yet people are super willing to just completely ignore issues in Marvel all the time, to the detriment of the game. Again, I might add, to the detriment of the game. And it's just like, dude, you have to be honest about these things, man. People need to be honest about the fact that engagement-based matchmaking does not help the case for any level of competitive integrity. And look, if we want to accept that maybe it is just a hyper-casual game, and I'm not even saying that from the position of, oh, that's a bad thing. Look, yeah, Minecraft is a very casual game. Fortnite's a very casual game. I don't play them, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's fine. They can exist. I don't have a problem with that. But like, you know, people got to be, we just got to admit these things, guys. We're going to admit the fact that maybe they have a very different direction, engagement-based matchmaking with all these other issues, and you know, you lose enough games, they shove you into a bot game. These are not like conspiracy theories. These are proven things that people have tested. You get thrown into bot games in quick play if you lose too many games in a row because it's engagement-based matchmaking. Like these are true. And yeah, there's plenty of things the game does well. You know, the fact that you get to hold on to your battle passes, even though the battle passes, I personally, to me, don't have as much meat to them as Overwatch battle passes. Maybe people can agree to disagree there or whatever. You know, the fact that they have like in-game spectating and replays in day one and a tournament system in-game day one, super awesome. I love these features. There's some things they do that are really, really, really awesome. You know, I like that they fulfill the hero fantasy well. I think third person has done well in that game. It's also required in the game because the number of melee heroes they have basically necessitates third person. It wouldn't work in first person. They clearly want to sell more skins, and third person is better for that. I think both games do influence each other. People often forget, people will never bring up. I think Sam and I are the only ones that consistently will bring up the fact that if it wasn't for Overwatch, very likely, in fact, I'd stake everything. I'd stake my net worth on it. You would 100% have a situation Marvel Rivals where you have to buy your heroes. It would be paywalled.
Oh,
And the proof
100%.
of that is
Dude, we
in the
saw
beta.
it. We saw the screenshot.
There was an owned and unowned check mark in the hero gallery. This is real. The footage is there. This is real. 100% the heroes would have been paywalled in Marvel Rivals if it wasn't for the fact that Overwatch did it first. It was negatively received, and then Rivals stepped back and was like, you know what? We'll make our heroes free. So guess what? You got to enjoy that in Rivals because Overwatch made the mistake first. So that's how both games are benefiting from each other. And like, if you want both games to continue benefiting each other, if you actually love Marvel Rivals, you want the game to be good, be open to criticism about the game, because that's what's going to improve your game. If you're always pretending the Emperor's clothed when he's not, and you're just ignoring issues and you're shutting down discussion, calling everyone shills and all this kind of crap, and it's just like, dude, you're going to make the game worse. You're just ignoring problems that, by the way, they're the same people who ironically act more like shills because they're shilling hardcore for netties. They're acting such, like, deep-throating the game so hard. It's like calling me a shill. The irony is insane. Calling the Kettle Black situation for real. And it's like, it's insane. It's insane how hard they shill for their game while calling me the same things. Like, dude, that's just literal projection, by the way. And I'm trying to be balanced. I typically have quite balanced takes, I'd like to think anyway. Yeah, you're preventing your game from improving by just, like, shutting down any discussion about negative things about the game. Okay, you should want Marvel to be a better game by opening up criticism for the game.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that passionate rant, so I let AVRL go there because I felt like once we unwound the chain, we kept going. So I will.
Can Hawk do one of those? Can I see Hawk do one of those? Hawk is so capable of doing one of those. Come on, come on. What do you got, buddy?
Right here is where you see it.
I'm gonna take it off, but I wanna remind everyone that in between all that passionate ranting, AVRL did stake his net worth on the fact that you could find Marvel Rivals was always going to be free to play. So if you want about $12, you just got to find proof that Marvel Rivals is always going to have heroes free to play. So there you go.
Listen, it was my first viral tweet about the game when they announced it. I literally tweeted unowned and I tagged AVRL in it. It got like 4 million impressions or something like that. Like,
I think I sent it to you. I think I sent a screenshot to you
and I tweeted it.
You tweeted it, yeah.
And legit, like they were going to do it. Like they 100%, like it 100% was going to happen. So listen, just call it what it is, people. Just call it what it is. That's all.
No one talks about it. No one brings it up.
Yeah.
All right.
It's crazy.
Well, I think that's just narrative, right? Public narrative, as you guys said, to round out that point. Like, if Overwatch had these performance issues, for example, like I can imagine like the Dixertos and the Jake Suckies or whatever their names are would be tweeting about it and being like, "Look at this," and like, you know, with the laugh emojis, because it would be the narrative. Like it would feed into the narrative what Overwatch is compared to Marvel Rivals. But Hawk, those were a lot of meta, I would say, complaints from AVRL, right? Do you have kind of any lessons that are like more with like the game format itself about what you can feel like Overwatch can take from Marvel Rivals and maybe why you didn't personally enjoy it so much?
Talk to me about Rivals tanks. Go there. I didn't go there. You go
Rivals tanks? Well, I feel like you kind of say that if I think if Overwatch released the thing, I think people would be very, very upset. I think people would hate the thing in Overwatch. I think I could go on and on about Rivals, but
Why? I want to know.
For the confused people, the thing is a hero in Marvel Rivals. He's not trying to be vague for some, you know, the thing is
like he can't even utter the name. He's like, I hate it so much, I won't even say the name.
Yeah. Voldemort, like won't say it. Like,
I don't know. You just sit main on tanks, and then you fire up your ult, and you try to one-shot them through the sustain of the other team once you have your ult. Like, there's nothing to really do. That's like at least a tank gameplay. Like, if I'm playing a PvP game, I want to play competitively, and I just don't think that game satisfies my competitive needs in any regard. Like, I think it's a low skill boring version of Overwatch in every way possible. You know, I'm
Elaborate,
sorry, but
elaborate.
that's just how
You're gonna have to elaborate. So what parts of it
think-
would
Come
you
on,
say are
Hog.
like low?
Come on, take
the
a
ultimates
snort
all-
and just go, okay?
Yeah,
Like,
all the
I just wanna
ultimates-
see it.
To preface this really before he goes, I got to see this conversation in a group chat with him and Kaluj, and it was one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen. Please go
See,
in.
I want
I mean,
this.
he knows
I want
too.
that.
Like he knows it's low skill too, but he's able to farm it because he's a good Overwatch player. But like, all the ultimates are so easy to use. All the healing is like 10 times what Overwatch ever was, even at its worst. You know, like the tank designs are just so boring. The melee heroes on tanks are so boring. Like I just can't fathom playing these heroes like for more than like I just get so bored. Like I have a 5090 and 9800 XVD, whatever it is, the best processor, and I have a best in slot PC, and this game still runs like shit. It still runs like shit. I don't understand why. Why is this game so bad optimized? Like it needs to be fixed. I just figured out a couple days ago that even if you have mouse excel off, it's still on in the game. I have to turn on raw input, and that I finally feel like I'm not playing with input lag. Like it is so, the game is just like complete dog in that regard. Other things like I don't like the community in that game. Like it is, I don't. The community in that game is like the Call of Duty players like congregated into this game. Like I've never heard more like outlandish things in like this like decade than playing that game. It is so like, oh my god,
They're terrible. Their naming.
yeah.
codes
Like
are
you could say
terrible.
anything in that game. You could say anything like and not get banned. It feels like, and
Does
it's
it feel like
just
a more toxic game?
Oh,
more.
yeah.
Like wait, it's not even
Oh,
close.
yeah.
Like people say
Oh,
Overwatch
yeah.
toxicity, like
Dude,
oh, it's
dude.
not
Okay, I'm
close at
sorry.
all.
One interruption, Kit. If you haven't, Samito, I want the crash out from like what was it, like 5 or 6 weeks ago, maybe longer, when you were talking about how evil humanity was. Dude, that
Oh,
was the
yeah.
most
I went-
legendary Marvel Rivals crash out.
Dude,
In
guys.
response to some weirdos, dude, it was amazing. The best
Dude,
content.
I
I
had-
do not
Link to me
endorse
right
this
now.
behavior at all, but it was
Where is it?
amazing. It was
Dude,
so bad.
I had my headset off queuing for an hour, and I was just listing like human beings, fictional or non-fictional, that did things. And I was like, Darth Vader is right, dude.
Dude, Darth Vader
Vader
is right, man. Like, dude, deadpan. Like, dude, this is people are just awful. Like, I just we deserve everything that it was like the most existential thing I've ever seen in a video game ever.
I actually
sorry,
lost
Hawk.
faith in humanity. Like it was just so like, dude, the stuff people are saying. Let me type something to you guys about how like toxic it is. Like,
I love
never
the
mind.
idea
Well,
that-
you guys keep going.
I
Never-
love the
Hawk,
idea
I'm
that
sorry.
I love the idea that you just take a motherfucker like Sam who loves games and you give him an hour-long queue and he just loses faith in humanity. Like he just like loses his mind.
Dude.
He's like, an hour in the queue?
It's so funny
not
because
worth
like,
it."
listen, I own my shit. Like when I say something's fucked up, like I own it. Like every time, and it happens. It does happen. Like I'm a super impulsive guy, but it's so funny how like particularly this genre or like these competitive games. And I know a lot of guys that are like this too. Like me like off playing video games is so different from me when I'm playing video games or like not just video games because like if I'm playing like Witcher or something like. I'm chilling, but specifically competitive multiplayer games. Like, I know some great dudes that have gone on the war path, just just pick the hill to die on. And Marvel Rivals absolutely is that type of game, dude. It somehow brings out the worst in people, but it's also addicting at the same time, which is why it's such a good has such good retention right now. But Spilo, I'd forgotten about that. That was like dude, a lot of those in play for engagement Rocket Raccoons, we'll say. Queuing that day.
Well, let's,
Don't know.
What you experienced is exactly how I will go back to Hawk, but what you said is
Yeah.
exactly what I experienced on Twitter or any other platform I engage socially for this topic. Whenever I try and have, and I've experienced it both ways, I can have just a super obviously rage baity tweet out there. You know the rage bait tweets compared to the non-rage bait tweets when it's like 2 sentences. Obviously I'm rage baiting, but I'll write like full essays of things of like, okay, here's my opinion, my real opinion, super nuanced, because it takes a lot. It takes many, many words. I can't do it in one tweet or like one short tweet. And you'll just see the kind of people responding to me, arguing against me from the Marvel side. It's just so deranged, man. It's so unbelievably deranged. And so I totally get it. When you lose faith in humanity, it happens to me all the time whenever I get in these situations. So I totally get it.
Yeah, I mean, on that depressing note, Hawk, did you have any
Going
more?
back.
Do you have any more thoughts on
Sorry,
just?
Hawk.
Let's try and keep it in sort of. when you played Marvel Rivals, and clearly you didn't enjoy it. What was it that made you reflect on Overwatch, where you were like, okay, well, I actually appreciate that this is something that like Overwatch does right, or like going forwards, Overwatch should definitely not do this?
I mean, I've already said this before before we started, but the engine of Overwatch just night and day. It's so much better than Rivals. I think that I've said this for a while too, but people say tank's unpopular in gaming, but Overwatch does tanking the best in any game I've ever played, and they should keep leaning into that, especially within the 6v6 environment. It just does tanking so well, compared to Rivals, and I don't know, like I feel like Rivals, I just play the exact same game every time I play. Like, even though there's bans, even though there's this, I pick tank because I like playing tanks traditionally. If I'm gonna play the game competitively, I'm gonna try to take it seriously on tank. And I'm just sitting main, farm my ult, doing damage. Everyone's getting healed exact like so much. And then once I have my ult, I try to one-shot somebody, and then I eventually one-shot somebody, and then I win the fight. If I don't one-shot somebody, I lose the fight. And it's like, where's the depth? Where is like the stuff that the meat that Overwatch has? Like, where is all of that? You know?
Can I add on?
Hand up, yeah.
Yeah.
To add on
I'll
to that
add on
game,
after that.
Yeah, to add on to that gameplay loop, the biggest issue Rivals has are the fucking support ults, dude. They've missed the mark on the
Yes.
support
Oh my
ults, and
God.
that's what's causing that, right? Like coming
And
back
the
to
res team
Overwatch,
up.
I
Fuck the res
popped the
team up.
trank. The res team up is crazy. I popped a trank in Overwatch, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, I thought I had 6 more seconds on this, and I came out of trank form on cart, and I just died. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not playing Luna Snow. I literally just like clock out. But again, like Rivals is a much more casual game. But like again, they need to stop just all the support ults do the same fucking thing, except for Rockets, who's brain dead, and then they just change Rocket ult to be more sustain based. And it's like, dude, if Sue Storm's ult, which lasts 6 seconds, actually like mitigated healing of people inside it and healed your team a little bit, that would have been way better design. But like there's like they need to differentiate it, because that gameplay loop problem is like very real that Hawk talked about. And when they add one character a month, again, I think their goal is not the same as Overwatch's. They're trying to be batshit crazy casual,
Which is
but
fine.
But Overwatch should focus on what it does well, which is kind of what you're talking about. Sorry to
real quick.
Yeah.
Loki, people are going to say, oh, yeah, but what about Loki? Dude, the most popular thing you do in Loki is copy a support and then Luna ult. That's what people do in Loki. So just putting that out there.
Instant. It's instant.
Yeah.
Instant.
One more thing is that I don't think the game, like, my main problem with the game is the combat. Like, the combat gameplay. Like, it easily could change over time. I could be like, wow, I actually like this game. But so far, since the alpha, since I played it, it hasn't changed. Like, I've gotten to like relatively high ranks, and I just get bored. Like, the game just feels like it gets worse as I get higher rank, comparatively to Overwatch, where the game feels better in Overwatch as you get higher rank, because people start, playing better comms, stuff dies the same rate. But I feel like in Rivals, like, people just get better at, like, keeping each other alive, and just like, what am I doing here? What am I?
Man.
It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You want to know why? Because at the highest level, and I've actually expertise on this, because I've casted Rivals now. I've seen the esport. I follow the esport. At the highest level, the game, not all the time, because I know there might be some Rivals esports people that are like, they'll jump in and be like X and Y and thing. But like, generally speaking, the game revolves around mostly everyone just grouping up together as a massive stack of 6, because off angling doesn't exist. You get punished for taking angles. You get punished for not just hard stacking with your team. It's revolved around getting ultimates. I always go back to like fights that I've seen literally casted in some of the esports where nothing happens, for no kills happen, 0 kills happen. Everybody in the lobby, 12 people in the lobby get ultimates, and then everyone throws ultimates. They don't wait till all 12. Obviously, one person gets an ultimate, then another person gets an ultimate, and then you get 12 ultimates thrown in there over the course of like 20 seconds, and then the fight is over. And the next fight happens, nothing happens because no ultimates are there. We're waiting, everyone's just poking, and you're like kind of engaged, but not really. But and then again, somebody gets an ultimate, boom, ultimate comes down, and then 11 more ultimates come down, and then the fight is over. It's so ultimate focused.
It's by design.
It's focused. Exactly, and it's focused around
The
like,
longer the team fight,
is there...
the more dopamine, and the more dopamine, the more it's Candy Crush for hero shooters is what it is.
Yeah, it's a
a gross simplification. It's a gross simplification, of course, and I think that there is depth that is there. Like a lot of these character designs are really complex and really cool, but when you if it's by design because there's no reason to have a 12-second support otherwise.
They won't nerf it.
They want the
refuse to
fight.
nerf it.
They want the
I don't
fights
know
to
why.
be drawn out.
They
They
also-
want the fights to be drawn out. So it's not
They
that it's a
also-
skillless game. Like you look at you look at somebody like Aramori playing support, right? Like those brief moments where she has to literally respond instantaneous with that. That's really high skill, but it's like those brief moments and then it's just very dull. And then the brief moment and then very dull. Like it's the same thing with Magneto and a lot of other things too, which is
I need to say something. I was this story time for like briefly,
Okay.
but
Go for it.
people have been trying to get me to play my rivals. People have been trying to get me to compete in that game. You know what? Like, I was like, okay, get me to scrim. So I scrimmed with 3 people that are currently signed and 3 people that have never scrimmed the game before. And we played against like a top 3 or 4 team. I think they got they got pretty high in the recent tournaments. I've never scrimmed. I have probably like 60 hours in the game. Simply off just like understanding Overwatch. At like a basic macro level, having 3 players that actually know what they're doing. We were able to like pretty much go even and almost like win. Like that should never happen. That should never happen in a game like this where these people have dumped 500 plus hours into a game. And I'm fresh off, never played group before in my life. Literally have probably 2 hours in group, probably played 30 minutes a thing, and I'm playing these heroes. I'm getting value. And I'm thinking like, would someone come from Rivals to Overwatch and be able to show up in a scrim and be able to like shoot back? No, there's no world. 5v5 or 6v6. There is no world.
But Hawk, you're also like, I'm no glazing here, but you're probably like in the top 2 or 3 best Western tanks literally ever to play Overwatch. So like, let's just kind of give that disclaimer here. Like,
Okay,
I'm just saying, like you're not. I agree with you, but I am saying like you are the GOAT of tanking in the West. So like I take the compliment and run.
Can I jump in?
So,
yeah, because I know Sam wants to go as well.
Everyone's gonna be like, "Can I jump in?" Actually, it was this guy. This guy was the.
No. I just want to say, like, I don't want to. I want to be careful not to disrespect the pro players or the people that play the high level, because I know what I said might sound that way. That's not what my point is. My point just is like having seen both games at the highest levels, there's a lot more depth to Overwatch at the highest level, even just on mechanics alone. I think Overwatch is a way more mechanically intensive game, and of course people will bring up like, oh yeah, but what about this character and that here? It's like, no, I still think Overwatch has greater requirement out of you on the mechanic level. And it's funny because I think the higher you get in Marvel Rivals, the higher rank you get, the higher level you get once you start scrimming, maybe play the tournament level, the game becomes more of a cooldown tracking, cooldown trading game more than anything to do with your raw mechanics of like shooting or aiming or anything like that. I'm not to say that
Is it like GOATs? Is it like similar to what GOATs was?
You have to hit your combos. You have to combo them. You have to one-shot them, or you literally have no chance to win.
Yes,
like,
because if you think, and again, I'm not saying no mechanics apply, but if you think supports being crazy in Marvel generally is like insane and bad for the game, wait till you see the highest level where the supports like Aramori is so good, and she's a great player by the way, she's fantastic. She recently reached rank 1, amazing player. But when you get that good at support, people aren't dying. No one's dying. This is why you can't like just take a flank. You can't just like make a play without an ultimate. You have to rely on these kind of team play combos, one shots. If you watch the esports as well, this is what it's based on. The esports is based on finding your combos and getting these combo one shots, and ideally either through a support ultimate or around a support ultimate when they don't have it. Good luck with that one, because the ultimates charge so fucking quick, by the way. It's ridiculous how fast ultimates charge. They need a global ult charge nerf by like at least 25%, but these things won't happen. Why? Because engagement-wise, Marvel do this on purpose, or Natives do it on purpose. They want higher engagement. That's why, like Spilo said, the 12-second Luna ultimates, that's why the healing is so high, because it feels better when you're a support and you heal giga amounts. It feels good as a support. It feels good as a DPS. It feels good as a DPS to be Iron Man and one-shot the whole team, or be Punisher and just like laser beam some dude down with infinite damage. It feels good. The whole game is played to the maximum dopamine receptor, like neurons firing as possible, right? And I'm going to be careful what I'm going to say here as well, this next one, because it might be a contentious topic. But look, I'm not a prude, but when you see these like Guna baity kind of skins, it's on purpose. It's like they know what they're doing. These things are designed to sell. They want you to buy it. They want to flare your neurons or your dopamine receptor. This is all what it comes down to. It's just like, It's not done for the benefit of the game. Okay, having a boober skin doesn't improve the game, but it might sell more skins. We just need to be honest about these things. Again, I'm not a prude. I'm not saying like, oh, I hate boobs or some shit. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like, understand that these things aren't made to improve the game. They're made to sell fucking skins. They're made to increase engagement so they can buy more shit.
Can I add on to this, SBB, real quick? Oh, it's Mike's
SVB, you're
muted.
muted. SVB, you're muted.
He
You're
just
muted.
spit
This
so
is
much
actually
fire.
time to see who's spitting.
Sorry,
man.
I was mute. I was trying not to laugh, but I was gonna say that it's on it's canon now that AVRL hates boobs. That's the one takeaway you should have from that whole
Or Lord.
One
discussion.
thing, really quick, Samito, SVB, I do have a topic about 5v5 and 66 that I want to touch on at some point here. So
Yes, and I
guess
was
when
gonna
we can.
try and bring it back as well, but
Wait,
I want to hear
go
what
ahead.
Sam was to say.
Real
I want to
quick,
hear
Sam.
Sam's
Real quick, no,
response.
that's something that that's another thing that Rivals just made me reevaluate altogether, because that's something I gave Overwatch shit for. I was like, dude, like these fucking Gooner skins, there's no stopping this shit anymore. It's out there, it's unstoppable. It's just gonna sell, and it's I guess it's just Gen Alpha, dude, or whatever it is now. I'm like, we're like the last of the millennials out here. I don't fucking know, but
Hey,
I
Sam.
want to walk my take back on this too, because you just can't stop it anymore. It's not Spilo.
Sam, but is Overwatch more for the girlies or what? Like you've got to address. these
Yes,
allegations,
yes,
friend.
it is. It
You
is.
have to address
Overwatch.
these allegations.
Listen. People, I'm gonna address it. People
Please
got
do.
fucking mad at me.
I
for
don't know
some
if I
shit
should
that we
stop
didn't
Sam as
say.
his friend. I don't know if I should stop him right
Listen,
now.
listen. We have said this shit for 5 fucking years. Now, I will admit the climate of the world has changed quite a bit, so that is on me. But we said this shit for 5 fucking years. I don't care how mad people get about it. It is fucking facts. When I load up the game and there's K-pop blaring in my ear, listen, that Overwatch is absolutely for the girlies and the gays, and I don't care how mad people get about that. It is facts, and they nail it. And everybody
Yeah,
knows
so-
that shit's true.
It's
Everybody
about
knows
you.
it
It's
is.
about the delivery, and I think the context. I think here is the
Yeah,
crucial
that's
thing.
true too. That is
Yeah,
true.
you
Yeah,
you got to level up your game, my friend.
I do.
It's-
I do.
It's,
I
it's,
admit, I do.
it's official now that Sam has spit it. I mean, I'm just gonna put a pin. I'm gonna put a pin in this part because we could have a whole separate 2
True.
3 hour podcast on just like
Yeah.
all of this, the duality between the next generation being more open to sex, but also more prudish, and this like the consequence of these skins and all that. But
Yeah. I opened that can of worm. I'm a big can of worm.
I wanna bring it back to the 5566 thing because I was gonna say you guys have been getting along so swell, can't have that. So I need to bring it back to the thing that I said I would bring it back to eventually, which is the question AVRL posed or Hawk posed to AVRL about tank synergies, and I was gonna bring it in with Marvel Rivals because obviously Marvel Rivals. I was gonna ask you guys like how you feel about the synergistic elements of Marvel Rivals, right? Because that's a big thing that we said was potentially problematic in Overwatch 1, the tank synergy. So firstly, how has Marvel Rivals done the synergy part? And then, AVRL, you'll get the chance to answer that question about what you find problematic in Overwatch 1 and open queue type tank situations. Sam, you got your hand up right now.
Actually, in terms of the synergy, I actually like it. I think perks are better because they're more consistent. I like the team ups though. Like some of them get boring and annoying at times, but like so does the game balance in general. I still consider it to be like an iteration. I don't think the synergy outside of team ups is better. Like it doesn't feel better chaining abilities like on Rivals as it did. It's like, yo, when your Monkey Diva dives is over in Overwatch and you like hit it, right? Or you hit something together. Like that was like Hawk, I know you remember this, the clip of like SBB and like Joe and Miro on Volskaya, and they were attacking second and they had the perfect dive on like the high ground in the back. Do you guys, Spilo, you remember that clip too where they had that perfect dive?
Yeah.
Like just a great moment. Like Rivals to me doesn't like have those. Like, you see that with Venom a little bit more now. Again, I think Rivals is so much like spam that it's like it's like the fighter games of like hero shooters where like everybody's button mashing and shit. So like I think there's like you don't feel the synergy as much, but I think team ups are really, really cool. I really like that element of it. I wouldn't say they're better than perks because they're conditional and perks aren't conditional. So I would say that I like it and I think it was a good iteration. But you know, it's solid. It's solid, I would say. Solid, but not god tier by any means.
Yeah, when you said SBB as in Sabiobi for a second, I thought you said SBB, and I was like, when was I diving with Miro in the back? I don't remember that game.
Freaking SVB on this
I mean,
tracer.
I am the tracer goat, but you know, when was I doing that with Miro? But yeah, who kind of wants to chime in right now on the synergy aspect? I kind of want to. save AVRL to let him kind of answer two birds with one stone. But Hawk and Spilo, maybe you guys want to talk about like the synergistic elements in Marvel Rivals?
I mean, I just think some of the
in
team ups
Overwatch.
some of the team ups are just like stupid. Like, I don't know. There's no other words to describe it. I just think like the res one is just so stupid. The Namor one is just so stupid. Like I think like you just get a free res just for picking heroes together like at full HP. Like why is that in the game? It doesn't make sense to me. It's like so game changing when you have that. Yeah, engagement. I mean, obviously, it was a rhetorical question. I know why it's in the game. It's a casual game, but it's not meant to be taken seriously. But if I'm trying to take it seriously, that type of stuff pisses me off. Like, it's like if that was an Overwatch, like I would be so tilted immediately tilted. Like I would be like, wow, why is that in the game? Like, I mean, the other tank synergies in that game, they don't really feel like. I mean, obviously, there's good tank synergies in that game, but it feels more like modern Overwatch, like the 66 Overwatch that we have now, where you can play more stuff together, and it's like not as strict as it once was because there's more options. But yeah, so that's about it.
It's kind
Spilo,
of
how
neutral
about
on the
you?
synergies within Rivals. Like there aren't a lot of synergies. You kind of just play whatever works together. I think the team ups, as Sam said, is probably the main synergy thing. But I think that while the concept is really cool and it encourages people to pick different characters, which I think is really good, I actually think it's way underexplored within Rivals. I think that the best synergies, the best team ups are the ones that are kind of like a two-way street where both parties benefit and both parties benefit from active choice. Like it's not like, even to go off of what Hawk was saying, like not just the res one, that's an egregious example, but even like you get 10% more healing. Like, wow, yip skippity doo, that's fun. You know, it doesn't really feel, there's nothing. I know we always beat the horse with Ryan Zarya, but even stuff like Brigitte Zen, right, where you have these supports that are lower healing but can complement each other's weaknesses in different ways. I don't see as much of that in Rivals. I don't think that has to be a thing, though, to be clear. Like, I think in many ways it can lead to, obviously, like overpowered synergies and things that are more reliant. But we want to avoid, if you're going to have team ups, synergies, whether it's through tank or DPS or support, you want to avoid things like, powering up Namor's turrets, but, Luna so basically just gets like healing output or whatever. I don't think that's actually the case anymore. You want to avoid stuff like Mercy and hit scan. Like, no offense, Mercy paired with hit scan is the least interesting thing to play with, against, or as Mercy. Like, it's the worst Mercy playstyle. Like, Mercy players don't like that. Like, the ones that actually enjoy the character, right? Like, it's just not fun. You stand there. It's the worst aspect of the character, right? So it's like, those are the type of synergies that are not unique to Rivals. They're not unique to Overwatch. They're just toxic, right? Whereas the things that require active participation from both ends, good timing, good communication, whether it's utility through bubbles or matrices or even burst healing or debuffs or whatever else. I think those are the more interesting things. I don't think you have to have those within Overwatch necessarily, whether it's 66 or 5v5. It's okay to have kind of two jack of all trades tanks, and Hazard, Doomfist, they don't have any direct synergies, but they do their things together. Sure, that's fine too. Rivals could do that too. But I do think that the synergies that are really strong but are really boring for certain parties is like, you don't want those in your game. That's not fun team play.
I think this is good to turn it over to AVRL. I will just say that Spilo has officially fulfilled his role as substitute for Jake by using the word egregious in a sentence. So that's good Jake roleplay. But now let's take it over to AVRL. AVRL, synergies, both, maybe you want to talk about Rivals, maybe you want to talk about Overwatch, but I think obviously this is also your chance to address the question Hawk posed to you a long time ago.
Okay, so these are kind of two separate things a little bit. Let's see if I don't know if I can link them or not. But talk about Marvel Rivals first. First of all, I'm not a fan of team ups at all, and the reason why is it feels forced. It's like perks, but it's forced. It requires that another player on your team pick a specific hero for you to get the benefit that you need on your hero. And for some heroes, the hero just doesn't play nearly as well without it. And then some of the team ups as well, as we talked about, like it's just like some of them can be crazy good, and some of them are just unbelievably mid and just awful. And I just don't like that the game kind of shoves you towards the direction of you need to play these two guys together. More of tank synergy or any type of synergy, any hero synergy should be organic to the game, where these two heroes kind of do things that benefit each other in some sort of symbiotic way, or they just help each other in more of a natural way that is there because the design of the heroes, not because the game literally says you need to play this hero and that hero to get this benefit. Like, it just feels unbelievably forced in the game, and creates weird scenarios where, you know, I know that they don't care that much about balance, but you have to consider that, like, you know, the difference between some heroes having the team ups and not is just insane. And having that kind of burden in the average game, in a very organized game where people are picking their compositions on purpose, whatever. But for the average player, you're in a solo queue situation, whether your teammates are going to like support you with team ups or not, it's just a complete shit show, man. Like, you're just going to roll the dice on that one. And, you know, you're going to get into weird player psychology issues where, like, you know, do people get like pressured into certain things to try and I pick for you, or you have to pick for them, blah, blah, blah. It's just annoying. So to dive into the Overwatch side here, so I'll make a couple of concessions first. The couple of concessions I'll make is that I think with the way the new tanks in Overwatch are, we are far less reliant on tank synergies existing to succeed. But the problem is those old tank designs still exist, and they still, in my opinion, still cause some problems. Perks mitigate some of this stuff as well. So tank synergies being a little bit too important to the game as far as 6v6, as far as the last debate went, is not as relevant. It still is in my mind, but it's not as like, this is so, and this is like, you know, the make or break point for me that I had sort of back then. It is still an important thing now, but I think the way Overwatch is heading, it might be less of a thing in future. But essentially it boils down to the fact that tank within its own role has more important synergies in terms of how impactful those synergies are in their own role compared to any other role. So it's not even just like how strong it is at the upper level, it's how much you miss out at the bottom level when you don't have that, or when you have anti-synergy and you're picking the wrong tanks together. So there's a gap there. So you have an existing gap between the bottom and the upper limits. And so that gap is really huge. So that gap is, in my mind, larger than the support or DPS synergy situation. In DPS side, yeah, I mean, you could pick a Tracer and engage together, and they can dive in together, and that's great. But if you picked two DPSs that don't necessarily do the same thing, maybe one dive DPS and a hit scan, not that big of a deal. You can pick two hit scans. DPS is pretty broad in terms of how you want to play the DPS, and there's not that much requirement for your DPS partner to play around you and pick for you. Supports, slightly more so, but still not that much. Yes, Brig Anna and stuff like that do exist. Yes, I watched the Derpy video. Yes, there are support duos that are going to be better than some other support duos that you can have out there. There's going to be a bit of a gap there. I'm not saying it doesn't exist on support, but I'm saying the gap between negative synergy and really high synergy on tank is just the largest gap in the game. And it comes down to the fact that tanks just need the most support in the game. Tanks, especially Overwatch 1 tank design, require you to have, for example, Ryan is a great example, your team needs to really play around you. Your team needs to pick around you. Your team needs to do things to enable your character, because you have such raw, apparent, obvious weaknesses that if you don't have your team supporting you, from the supports literally heal botting you and just like putting a ton of effort into you, apps having to lamp you and all this kind of stuff. You might even have a DPS situation where Symmetras might need to teleport you around. Consider that London Spitfire and Hardy, you know, they can only make Rhine work when the entire comp is built around the Rhine and everything is built around to allow the Rhine to succeed, right? Then obviously you want to have an off tank, which then can mitigate more of the weaknesses, a Diva or a Zarya or something, some sort of off tank. And obviously we always go back to the Diva and Zarya because they're the quintessential off tanks. And, you know, I think off tanks are just weird in this game. It's a tough one for me because I like off tanks in the fact that I think they're like nice in terms of mechanical design, but I don't want the game to revolve around you need like a main tank and an off tank. Maybe Hawk's about to tell me very soon that in the super high level ranks that's not the case, and you don't have to have a main tank and an off tank. But the history of how two tanking works and duo tanking, the thing that people unfortunately like about 6v6, oh, I love the tank synergies. Well, guess what? The tank synergies is the part that I think holds back 6v6 the most, because that's the thing that, to me, to really succeed in your team to win, tank synergy isn't just something that is nice and you should do to try and win the game. It becomes nearly a requirement, right? It becomes a sort of situation where if your team has synergistic tanks in playing synergistically and helping each other, and the other team does not, it becomes really, really hard for the other team. Maybe good players at a higher rank have a different experience, but in low ranks, man, it's a shit show. It's really bad. Every single 6v6 game I play in open queue right now, if I pick around my other tank, I play all roles, but if I play tank and I pick around my other tank, or they pick around me, or the other team doesn't, we roll them. If the opposite happens, they roll us. It's like the night and day difference is so extreme in that particular role that I just think it's still pretty egregious. Maybe it's better now in 2025 than it was before, but I still think it's an important topic.
Hawk, does that sufficiently answer your initial query? Like, are you like, I can see that?
I can see that, but at the same time, like my experience just has not been like close to the same. Where I thought, man, like we just can't win if we don't have this energy. Like I've had many games where we're just playing like, I mean, most games like people are just playing random stuff. Like if you play well, like you get this scenario where you pick around your other tank. But imagine you're just the tank that you everyone else picking around you. Like you pick, let's say you're an insane Sigma player, and you just play Sigma, and you're the best Sigma player. You'll just like in the lobby, you're the best player in the lobby. Like you'll just be able to impact the game so much because it's not about what you pick in the synergy wise as much as it was. It's about how you play, and that's what I like about it right now. Like there's so much room for execution rather than one blatant counterpicking, two blatant obvious play styles that you have to play as. Like I am so relieved that I don't have to sit main on D.Va. Like, oh my god, like it is like I remember we did like a coaching test maybe like a year ago or so. I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell you here. Like, there's nothing I can't tell you to go flank. I can't tell you to do this because you'll just end up throwing the game for your team. But like, it's so nice. Like there's so many windows to just punish people that even are synergy, like picking synergy. Like, there's so much room for execution. That's like, it's one of the reasons it's been so fun for me is that you actually have to play well. You can't just pick the equivalent of double shield because that doesn't exist anymore. You can't just pick the equivalent of, Winston D.Va because I'm gonna be honest. I think Winston D.Va loses most of the time to a good ball and hazard. If they're playing ball hazard, these heroes don't really have any synergy, natural synergy. But I genuinely believe that these heroes lose to them if they play well. Like it's not an obvious win. It's not an inherent like dub if you just pick synergies. Like I think they've done a really neat thing here where it's opened up the role similar to Overwatch 2 support where the main tank and off tank lines are blurred. Like these heroes have been introduced in a solo tank environment and now they're being transferred back into it and the lines are blurred. Like someone might be able to play Doom, which is in different play styles, or you might be able to play D.Va back in her original playstyles of I'm a good rush D.Va, I'm a good dive D.Va, I'm good at peeling, I'm good at doing these types of things. And there's so much more depth. It's like chess. It's chess compared to checkers 5.5 tank. Like my brain is firing on so many more cylinders, trying to find ways to find advantages for my team rather than just sitting main, hoping people get kills. And it's so much more interesting for me. Like maybe that's just because I'm a high level player, but like I'm having so much fun. I'm like, wow, like I feel like I'm even if I'm an extra player in the game, like theoretically, like I have less individual impact. I feel that I personally have more impact on tank in 6v6. Even with less stats, I'm doing more with less stats than doing less with more in 5v5.
I have a question. Obviously, this is going to be maybe hard to answer. It's going to end up being a hypothetical because no one's currently scrimming 6v6 to my knowledge because there's no competition for it. There'll be no reason to scrim 6v6. But hypothetically, if you were to scrim 6v6 or we changed esports to 6v6 and everyone played 6v6 at the highest level, do you think, on average, assuming two teams of equal skill level, that the Winston D.Va team wouldn't win more win rate percentage wise than the Hazard Ball team?
No, I don't. I think if you're playing against Jumping on Ball, you're gonna get dominated.
So equal skill level. So let's
equal skill level.
Crazy Raccoon. Let's copy paste Crazy Raccoon. They scrim themselves. If you could clone Crazy Raccoon, they could scrim themselves. Well, let's not use outliers. Let's remove. Okay, because let's remove the fact that Jim is the best. Because the problem is we're getting to outliers. So Jim is the best in the world. That's kind of like that gets into weird territory. So let's just pretend they're just like equal skill level. You're not playing against Jim, the best ball player in the world. It's just like everyone's equal skill level. Everyone's like, I don't know, GM or some shit. And then, are you saying the Winston D.Va team doesn't win more than the Hazard Ball team? Seriously?
Maybe on a certain patch they do, but I'm saying there's still some execution like that is required. Like we're talking about people that play this game for a living. You're never ever going to get this execution in a ranked game, no matter what. So I'm
Can I
you're
chime in really
primarily talking
fast,
about
Ben?
ranked, but yeah, sorry.
No, I was gonna say because I think your analogy between Hazard and Ball and like Winston Diva is definitely accurate. I think that you talk about two relatively flexible tanks that are relatively well performing and have relatively high skill ceilings. But I think Avril, the impression that I got from your point wasn't so much Hazard Ball versus Winston Diva. It's those, again, we hate to say it, but it's the Roadhog Malga. It's the bottom seller outliers. So like when you have the power of tank synergy, you also have the responsibility of a really bad potential tank combo, right? And my argument for that is like, I agree with you 100%. All of my worst 66 games were with the really bad hero on the really bad map multiplied by 2. Every time. Worst 66 games are with those right there. But my argument is that I think that that is much less of a problem now, and I think we've kind of discussed that in the current environment of Overwatch 2 right now. Like if you go back to 2019, right, and you think about not just perks, not just the built-in things like double fire strike, being able to cancel pin, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Like ignoring those limitations, because that's already enough flexibility. But you also don't have Hazard. You don't have Junker Queen. You don't have a lot of these other things. You don't have tank Doomfist, right? You really just, if you were Ryan, you had Zarya, you had Diva, or that was it. You were trolling, right? And so what I have found that in my 66 games, whether it was with the workshop code, whether it was quick play, whether it's with the open queue, I don't have those outlier games nearly as often. It's just a statistical outlier where I have a really, really bad tank combo. And when I do, I can go, well, at least my Zarya can ult fire herself to high ground, right? Like if I'm playing double off take, at least she can do those things. But I do think that is an important point though, that like we're not necessarily, I'm not as personally concerned about the OP tank synergy. I think it's less likely. I'm more concerned about the really, really bad combos. And if I could really quickly segue, I want to address, Avril, your point about tank synergies. I think part of the thing is that they're very visible, but Hawk, when we talk about constructing compositions for literally 8-9 years, it's always been long range, short range character composition almost exclusively on DPS. And it has almost always been, I hate to use these terms, main healer, off healer. Lucio Brig, really filling off those off healer roles more often than not. And it's really just been that, right? So like how many times do you see Moira, BAP working in top 500, right? It doesn't happen. It's basically as bad as a bad tank synergy. How many times do you see, you pick like Reaper Junkrat on Gibraltar? You need a hit scan. You need a hit scan on Gibraltar first, otherwise you're kind of screwed, right? So I agree with you, Avril, that like the tank synergy is probably the most important, but I think it's only because the visibility. Nobody ever pays attention to why do we always have a hit scan tracer meta? Why is that always the case? Why has that been the case off and on for years now? And it's because of those synergies that we don't even talk about.
Not just visibility. It's not just visibility. Mathematically, it also checks out that tank's synergy with damage mitigation is more valuable and impactful. Damage and healing operate in a 1-to-1 ratio. Outside of very specific scenarios where I can name them for you right now, Bionade will impact your healing rate. And what else? Armor, technically, if you look at it from my angle, armor is technically healing efficiency because you deal less damage to armor, but you heal armor the same as HP, which you can either see it from the angle of its damage reduction, or you can see it from the angle of its healing efficiency because you essentially heal more for the amount of damage you take. What it basically saying is it deviates from the 1-to-1. 1 damage equals 1 healing. When that deviates, it deviates only through very specific things like armor or Bionade. But when you talk about damage mitigation, it completely blows the door open. This is where I get the difference between the linear or the additive difference between healing and damage versus the multiplicative influence and impact of damage mitigation, where things like Matrix and Spear Spin mitigate infinite damage. Obviously, there's beam weapons, but beam weapons are very few in the game. There's not that many. There's like 3 heroes or something like that. Majority of damage is mitigatable by things like defensive matrix and spear spin. And even when you get into things like shields, shields on like a normal scale, 1 shield HP is 1 damage, right? We get that. But when you get to another situation, shields can also hypothetically mitigate infinitely against 1 damage source. When you consider that 1 HP a shield can block an entire Diva Bomb, right? 1 HP a bubble can block an entire Diva Bomb. So you get these interesting tank mitigation scenarios where tank mitigation completely breaks the 1-to-1 relationship between damage and healing to the point where like when you enable tank damage mitigation on top of each other, stacking against each other, you have less damage windows. You can actually impact the tanks and damage the tanks unless they're making a mistake, or you're playing so well that they blow through all their mitigation cooldowns. You just find them open. At least in 5v5, those windows are more apparent. You don't have a second tank that is then overlaying the mitigation on top of the first tank when its cooldowns are gone. One of my biggest issues with double shield is not that you could put down 2 shields at the same time. It was that you could trade the shield cooldowns. So you break one shield, oh, there's the other shield from the second tank comes down. You break that shield, guess what? The first tank shield comes off cooldown. Now his shield is back. That was the most egregious part of 2 shields, not that both shields got played at the same time.
Yeah,
So
but
I'm
you
just
trade that
gonna-
off for more vulnerability before and after. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a trade-off, right? So there's a during that brief moment, the timing tempo 66 is inherently, I think, more tempo focused, like where the timing of the cooldowns is really important, like to take a favorable trade, right? But
Okay,
but that's also go ahead, SVB, I'm sorry.
Yeah, all I'm gonna say is that firstly, Spilo, you're supposed to be on his fucking side. So I don't know what you're doing. But secondly,
I'm for tank synergy. If we're gonna have 66, like I'm not against tank synergy.
I'm kidding. It's totally fine. But also, I know that we are pressed for time. So all I'm gonna ask is that each of you, I want all of you to express whatever you haven't expressed, but try and summarize like your last sort of things that you want to say right now.
I have a really important topic I would like to talk about really fast.
Go ahead.
Because I think maybe the most important thing about 5v5 and 66 that I re-app about, but nobody else yaps about, it's the space problem in Overwatch. And we touched on it earlier, Hawk, where you talked about there's a little bit like there's a very heavy focus on favorable cooldown trades, taking good tank trades, not to the point of Marvel Rivals in that aspect at all, but like taking good tank trades and then taking space as a result. Whereas 5v5, there is almost always a lane or an angle available for you to take basically immediately and as an attacker, almost always, depending on the map, of course. And this is married with a lot of Overwatch 2 map reworks, which for the most part have been really good, right? So we have a lot more space to work with. Okay. My preference for skill expression has been that space, taking a space. People make fun of me for the angle guy. I'm like the only non-Korean coach that apparently knows what an angle is, it feels like sometimes. And it's like, that has always been my preference, right? Which is like, I like space, I like angles, I like dive, I like tracers and Genjis and staging and proactivity and Kiriko's taking flanks, and I pull my hair out when I see my support sitting in the back line. That's my preferred skill expression. 66 doesn't have as much of that because there is more congestion. Now, Samito has made the very good argument that it is easier for DPS to contest tanks controlling space because you can take favorable trades with that tank. And that is true, but it is a more multi-step process. And if you can actually take that trade or not. So for me, I've always looked at, hey, and let me finish my thought here. I've always looked at 66 as like the fundamentally more cooldown oriented, favorable cooldown trade. You talked about your enjoyment of support, like focusing and healing your tank and hitting a cooldown on that tank and trading the tank. And Lucio has a lot more to do with. Like, I think that is just objectively true, and I think it's anyone's subjective preference about which one you perform more. Mine is just I like having more space. The topic I want to get to though is that whenever I play 6v6, I feel Defender's advantage a lot heavier than I do with 5v5. I feel that congestion a lot more, even with these reworked maps. It's not a negative thing all the way. It's really fun to hold a choke with characters as that tank or as that DPS. But I think that like this is one of those, I think, inherent weaknesses of 66 that I don't think that you can necessarily patch away, is that Defender's advantage becomes much more of a real thing that you have to factor into the player experience. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean the 66 is worse. It's just something we have to be aware of, right? And so it's in the same manner that at 5v5, that solo tank feels unmovable in that one spot, right? So
yeah,
what do you prefer as a player? Do you prefer to kind of creatively express your skill through taking space? That's my preference. Or do you prefer it by taking better and smarter cooldown trades? That's other people's preference. And I think like that's really where we can find what do players actually enjoy. And if we go with 5v5, can we mitigate that weakness of 5v5? And if we go with 66, can we mitigate that weakness of 66 where it can really feel like every 66 game generally ends on a choke? Pretty much always ends on a choke. Now, where that choke is, it depends.
So all I'm going to say is I know. Sorry. I know you want to chime in. I know Hawk wants to chime in. But I'm conscious that Sam has to go in like 5 minutes. So I'm going to let Sam give your thoughts. Sam, if you have to like run, give your concluding thoughts as well.
I gotta give them, and then I'll run it. You guys keep going. So
give your concluding thoughts as well, which is just like what you want to see from the future of all.
Who we want after this?
Yeah. So okay, yeah, you got it, buddy. Look, I will say that I think that the debate was very productive. Like from the first one to now, I think Rivals being involved has been very productive. I'm actually really happy with how things have gone. I'm happy that, like, to be honest, like there was like after Rivals came out, like I didn't have Overwatch installed for like 2 months until like 6v6 perks came out. Like I hadn't played, like I was frankly just done with the game. Like it didn't have a big offering for me, but then they came out with 6v6 and perk watch, and like it is a very definite upgrade in my opinion. I think, to add on to what Hawk said, I think the most important thing isn't actually the synergies, but the gameplay loop options, right? That's really the best part about 6v6 when everybody's more relative to each other. I think that, and not having a super character on the map, because the reality is what broke 6v6 to begin with was that there were 2 super characters on the map in Double Shield, maybe even 3, you could argue, the backline. And now that that's not really the case as much anymore and everybody's getting crazy stuff, everything feels much more relative. I love the gameplay loop. I love actually being able to play make on tanks. The game feels a million times better not shooting a raid boss tank and actually allowing myself to have gameplay options. The perks update was great. I love Rivals and the band system and the formats, really. And I think this is going to be a golden era for the hero shooter. I think more people should do what AVRL said and appreciate that both games are there, and they both have their own unique offering, and everybody can kind of win in that regard. And we have a lot of lessons to learn. We're getting double the information, which is awesome. And I'm going to sit here and enjoy the competition. Anybody who's sitting here and thinking like that competition is a bad thing is crazy. I'm really excited to see where both of these games end up midsummer of this year. I think that's when it's really going to start. That's when the dust is going to settle and the marathon begins. And I'm going to enjoy the ride with my popcorn. So yeah, dude, I do have to go, guys. I got a meeting at 9, but I appreciate you for having me on SVP. You guys hold down the fort for me. Don't have too much fun, okay? Don't have too much fun. I know you guys are going to have a good time, but I appreciate you guys. I'll see y'all, okay?
All right, peace out, Sam.
Take care,
This is
boys.
when we're going to
Yeah.
get into the real shit. Okay, so the overlay's going to mess up us a little bit, but I'll now go back. We won't spend too much longer because obviously I know I've taken already a lot of you guys' time, and with Sam gone, it feels weird to continue to do without it. But I will let you guys kind of finish these thoughts that you were on. So AVRL, you go ahead. What do you want to say?
I don't want to end without just closing the book on this one, but I would like to get Spilo's response to what I'm saying about the fact that tank synergy is not just visible. I think it's mathematically just way more highly impactful based on what I said. I don't know if you need me to reiterate the thing again.
No. I remember. No, well, my response will be super short, which is like, I understand, but it feels so philosophical to the point to where I would need to know numbers on that. I understand your point, but it's kind of like beyond the realm of like, I mean, I can also respond with the philosophy of like, yes, tank synergy is really OP, but compared to damage and healing output, it is locale focused. That is what is.
Hang on, I gotta correct you. It's not that it's OP. It's the gap between the highest level and the lowest level, on top of it being potentially OP.
And I agree. I agree with you there. I agree with you there. Like the bad, I think the worst tank synergy versus the worst support synergy might be pretty close for me. But like I do mostly agree with you. I just think it's so philosophical that I honestly don't know that if I have an answer. I don't know, and that's really just conjecture.
Okay, fair enough.
Hawk, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, like going back on this, you say it's like a multiplicative mitigation. And I understand that, like it's kind of like you get to execute it, and like there's like some like sort of like requirement for that. But I feel like the baseline mitigation that a tank gets in 5v5, like I can know you can go around, you could like shoot around them. Like this will go to space in a second, but the baseline mitigation of a 5v5 tank feels as if they are mitigating as 2 tanks in a tank line. Like I generally have a harder time killing a tank in 5v5 than I do in 6v6, and that is a entire tank line 66, 2 tanks, and that's a problem because I mean there's like 5 reasons for this. I could give one, like 1, each tank has less HP. 2, each tank has less resources individually. Their abilities are turned down. Their cooldowns are a little higher. 3, like supports healing is split. Like that's a big thing. And then I think probably the biggest thing is that there's another player on the map also doing damage. So like you said, there's like mitigation, but there's also another player pumping damage into a tank, causing them to die way quicker. And of course, the 5th one, the fucking passives. The passives are the biggest thing. They provide so much passive mitigation, exponential mitigation in 5v5. And some tanks benefit more than the others, but like boot production is unreal. Is an unreal comparison between 5v5 and 6v6 right now. Like the boop, being able to get boop a tank off you feels so much better as a support than just falling over and you're shooting them in the head and they're taking 25% less damage and you're shooting this tank. He's sitting in the open, he's feeding, but you're only getting 50% of your ult. There's so many things that like just give passive exponential mitigation in the 5-5 format too that I don't think we should ignore that, because you could have two of them, and if you execute perfectly, you have like 1 or 2 more seconds of like pure mitigation that like exponentially stacks. But like there's still a resource meter there that I think you can maneuver.
Yeah, no, I do. Look, listen, I'm happy to concede that in 5v5, tanks, particularly when the numbers are not tuned well, don't have enough, because it goes back to the damage window situation where like I argue that in with two tanks can cover the damage windows better in terms of, okay, if one tank is on cooldown, another tank has a mitigation ability they use to cover the window. In a solo tank scenario, if the numbers are tuned poorly, then that can be a problem as well. Like you can have a hazard who drops down, or he can hold down right click and that runs out and you drop down a wall and then he just leaps away because the cooldown's on and it's just like you feel like you can't punish them. Ball is probably the most egregious example of a tank that in 5v5 feels extremely difficult to punish. So I would agree that in 5v5 tanks probably need more obvious windows where you can punish them. But I think if there's a way to better navigate the 6v6 scenario of two tanks, the difference between two tanks working well together, feeling so much more ridiculously strong and impactful the game than the opposite. And again, people will say, like, again, it's not the same on DPS or support. Yes, if you play, what was the example, Moira or Mercy or something, it's not going to be great. But you can't tell me that's worse than like a Hog Malg. It's like the tank one is so much worse because the tanks feed way more. They're going to feed way more ult charge. Their deaths are going to, and yeah, it is more noticeable, but it's more noticeable because I think it's also because it's more impactful. I do think those two things are also linked as well. So, and for what it's worth, I also do concede that in like modern 2025 Overwatch, this basically right now is my concluding thought as well. In modern Overwatch 2025, 6v6 has at least improved those issues quite a bit with modern tank design. They just got to do something about the old tanks. This is going to sound crazy, but I don't like the off-tank, main tank situation. I would like it if all the tanks were kind of like a Queen, Hazard, can do their own thing. They don't require as much support from the rest of the team. It's not just like, people talk about team play in 6v6. It's like, it's great. I like team play, but I don't like it if it becomes a requirement. Oh, you can't play a Rhine unless your team literally plays around you. And it's team play at that point isn't an option. It's if you don't have team play, you're just having the worst game ever. So I don't want team play as a requirement.
Juno's kind of a good example of like that new support style that's kind of like that, where she can output enough healing, but she also has a lot of utility. So she can function as your tank healer, but she can also function as your flanker, your flank support. And I think Kirikou as well. So
the reason why I dislike off tanks is not because of the design. Dude, I like shooting. I think the fact that off tanks are more like mechanics based is amazing. But maybe then we should only have all off tanks. Either have all off tanks or all main tanks. So the reason why I'm saying, or just like none of those things. And actually, the better scenario is just to have more like modern, all-rounded tanks like the Queen and the Hazards and stuff like that. Or if Malga was better designed, but he's fundamentally not well designed. So the point is, like, when you have a distinct, especially it's way worse than Overwatch 1, main tank, off tank differentiation, it's not an option anymore. It becomes a requirement. It was way worse in Overwatch 1, admittedly, than it is now. But it's like, the old tanks still have that DNA in them. And it will always cause problems for me unless those issues are navigated. And to close up, I wouldn't mind if the entire game was only 6v6 in future, if it was proven to be the more popular game mode, statistically speaking. And if Blizzard could address some of the weak points of 6v6, either brought up by myself or Spilo or others, because there certainly are weaknesses in 6v6 that some people don't like to talk about it at all. Very, very similar to an Emperor's New Clothes situation. There's a bit of overlap between 6v6 people and Marvel fan base where like they just don't like to talk about the downsides. Not anyone on this panel, but just people out there in the world. So I'm open to the idea of like landing on 6v6 potentially as the game mode, because I'll admit it, like at its peak when played perfectly, especially at the highest level, especially as an esport, it's actually better. It's actually the better game at that very highest level when you like overcome all the RNG of solo queue matchmaking. But we're going to do something about, if we're not going to do roll queue, which I don't think we should anymore, because you got to make sure queue times are good in 6v6 format, then we got to do something about like the lows of potential open queue plus 6v6 at the same time, where like people just don't pick well, and you just get like super fucking dog shit games because of the RNG or solo queue. Like that needs to be addressed massively in 6v6 for me to really buy into it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
I agree.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's a sentiment probably everyone can agree on, and it's a good place to kind of head to the concluding, because I think the thing that I reflect on a lot from where we are now is that I think that the existence of both 6v655 and Marvel Rivals has kind of made everyone appreciate the other side a little bit more. I think like seeing 6v6 better now, like then 6v6 now, it was better than what it was when it was a problem in like whatever the time was before we switched, right? It's like, as you guys have already alluded to, it's like a lot of things have come in that have made them easier, whether that's perks, whether that's like just the actual designs of the heroes, the community, the like map design. All these elements have made 6v6 more favorable. At the same time, I think 5v5 has also improved, right? Like devs have also improved 5v5 from like the original complaints of like the giga tanks that like are brainless and blah blah blah. But those gripes still exist for both sides. So there's like a fundamental problem I think that both sides still feel with the other mode. But it is encouraging that we've kind of reached a point where both of them feel better as a consequence of each other. Like they've learned lessons from each other. So I'll take it to Spilo in a second, but I think on that note, that's a good point to kind of bring it to a conclusion. Any thoughts you guys want to bring up of like how you want to reflect on everything we've spoken about now, plus your concluding thoughts on where you want to see it go next? Like what is the future for the format of Overwatch? It could be short term. It could be like pie in the sky ideas. What do you want? Spilo, go ahead.
But before we go, I really want Hawk's thoughts on the whole discussion about like space versus cooldown
sure.
trades, because I really think that's like
Yeah.
cooked into the game, and you feel it the first 66 game you ever play.
Comparing to like Overwatch 1, I think removing Arista's pull was so bad for the space of the game in Overwatch 1. Like you could not take any angles in that game because you would just get pulled and you just die. So people just like congregated together in that game. But also the hero designs in Overwatch 2 have like promoted more flanking along with the regen pass that everyone has.
Yep, true.
There's more space in Overwatch 1, but it is still a problem. I will admit. But personally, I enjoy the space is more open for the tank player in 6v6 to take angles besides sitting main, and it's also more rewarding on tank when you do take the angle and you get the kill. Because whenever I walk up to somebody on 5v5 and solo tank and I kill them, I'm like, that was not impressive at all. Like this guy had no chance to kill me. There was no chance the person killed me unless they ganged up on me 3 or 4. Like it shouldn't take 3 or 4 people to take down someone, because like the illusion's gone. Like I know how powerful and OP my role is in 5v5. Like it's blatant with how many stats they've given me. But I like the game where you get to fight for space. I think that's part of the game. You know, it could be frustrating in some scenarios, but I think that it adds a lot to like the neutral game of the game, besides of, well, their Sojourn has this angle, my DPS isn't contesting this angle, it's a problem. Oh, their Sojourn got a kill, I'm 4v5, they're all on the point now, they're looking at me, well, this fight's over. And it happens, this is a common theme, like this is not like something that happens, like this happens most games where some person will just get a pick. And that's one of my reasons I love 6v6 so much, is that a 5v6 is just so much more engaging than a 4v5. I hate 4v5. It's one of the, like, even the pro play, I hate it when someone got picked. It is so tilting. It is unbelievably tilting when your DPS just can't figure it out. It's one of the reasons why the West sucks in this game. They just can't figure out how to take angles from these Koreans. They can't figure it out. The supports and these DPS just can't figure out how to take these angles and win a duel. So you just lose off spawn so many times.
Malcolm is the solution. Malcolm.
And they still lose that. They still get dominated. It's like okay, well, yes, these angles these angles are like doable, but like the tank isn't really engaging them, and I'm a tank player and I enjoy that. But it's also like you can't really interact with the tank on the DPS and support role. It's just like, I think it adds more to the game, and I like the longer team fights so much. Like it is so. The adrenaline you get, the dopamine you get. I played this game for 9 years, and it's still so thrilling when you get these like close games, and it's back and forth, and people are coming back over and over and over again. I do think, side note, I do think group respawns at 66 might need an adjustment. I think sometimes you catch a wave too easily, and people get back way too quickly sometimes. But it's just the chaos is just so fun. Like it's just. I'll say it again. It's checkers compared to chess, like 5v5 Like I just enjoy the depth of the game, and maybe it's because I'm like privileged at like a higher rank because of that. But like it's just so engaging. It's just like it is Candy Crush. Like the Overwatch edition. It's just like such
Yeah,
a
it's not
like
the same. Yeah.
it's just so it's just I don't know. Like I
Yeah.
love this version of the game. Like it's just so amazing how like much depth there is just by adding another player, and it doesn't even have to be a tank. I don't know. It's just fun.
Yeah, and I think that illustrates well again, like, you know, the reasons why people gravitate towards one or the other, right? It's like there are trade-offs. We've said this many times. There's trade-offs to any format, but it's like if you prefer, like as you said, Hawk, like you prefer fighting for that space, like it's fine. Whereas for other people, they find it problematic, right? They're like, it makes the game more clustered, more congested. Spilo, like he says, you know, I prefer having the angles and the spacing. So I think that is ultimately what it's going to come down to, right? Like, hopefully we've illustrated the pros and cons of each side, but like ultimately you're going to fall one way. The sword's going to fall one way, and where it does is where you land on the format. So on that note then, Spilo, hopefully your question has been answered. Do you want to give me your concluding thoughts?
Sure, sure. And I think Hawk did a good job kind of illustrating what I was talking about, where, like, you know, one of the downsides of spacing in 5v5 is that the space that the tank does occupy generally is a lot harder to contest than it is in 6v6. So as somebody that kind of enjoys, wouldn't exactly use the chess versus checkers analogy, but I enjoy the more freedom that a DPS and support can kind of positionally express immediately. I would prefer it from that perspective more so. But Hawk's point about taking those cooldown trades, having the dynamism of tank trades, is something that is inherently more there in 6v6. And so it really going to depend on what you enjoy about that aspect. Is that better for the game? Is that better, easier to balance around? I don't really know. I'm fine with 6v6 open queue. I've had a decent enough time playing it, more so than I have. I think the queue times is really important. I think they need to obviously check the stats on queue times, and you know, how often are we getting 222 in gold, silver, and bronze and plat? And obviously, like, kind of, because we all have our own biases of our experiences, and so they need to obviously consider the larger player base as a whole. One last point I want to talk about with 66, last tiny little detail. If Gavin Winter's still in chat, Gavin, they have to fix armor. They have to fix armor. The current iteration of armor is just absolute garbage, and is a large part of the reason why Initiator Tank feels so bad, because the whole -5, -7 damage is so incredibly useless versus projectile DPS sources, spam damage sources, that you just get absolutely blown up. Like, your burst damage on Initiator Tanks is unbelievable if your name isn't Wrecking Ball. And it's because it's only effective versus Bastions and Tracers and stuff like that. Things that, like, it's nice that it's better versus Bastion Reaper, but like Junkrat, Hanzo, anything, it's unbelievable how fast you get bursted down, and they haven't fixed that. They've bounced between like a flat 30% damage reduction to 5. Okay, now it's 7. They need to have a min and max threshold. I have a whole video on how to fix it. I have a bunch of wannabe programmers on my Twitch chat that said it's really easy to implement. They need to implement it. It's not even a question of it has to be done. You need armor to be consistent damage output reduction from all damage resources, and then you can scale it to be stronger or weaker depending on how well it functions. And literally that compromises my enjoyment of 6v6, because armor tanks don't feel armored versus the projectile damage sources, especially because the space is so much more congested, so projectile damage sources do better. So that segue aside, 66 open queue is great. Hero design has helped the game out a lot. Perks have helped out the game a lot. Passive heal, like Hawk said, helped the game out a lot. The worst case scenario of getting the worst tank duo is still something that I want to keep an eye on. The scalability from worst tank combo to the best tank combo is something they'll need to continue to work on. Dynamism, good. Transferable hero skills, good. Let's just, I'm open to anything, to be honest.
I'm sure I won't speak too much for Gavin, but I'm sure he would say, not my department, Spilo. So
yeah, I don't give a frick, buddy. I don't give a frick. He's got
Yeah.
Blizz something, so obviously he's responsible for
all
everything.
complaints to the Blizzard must be directed towards Gavin. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll actually I'll let AVRL go next, and then Hawk can kind of sum up both both sides of the 6v6 on behalf of Samito as well. So go ahead,
I've
AVRL.
basically already done my conclusion, but the only thing I'll add is I'll speak towards a couple of things that I think need to improve 5.5 as well, just so people, obviously I already have been, but just in case there was any outstanding beliefs that I don't have any criticisms against 5.5. I've talked about counter picking already. There's not much else for me to add there except to say that maybe that would be further fixed by just being able to, again, so much of this comes back to just like needing to update the super outdated design of the original tanks in Overwatch. But beyond that, in 5v5, and I'm not too sure how you sort of even influences, but I think there's a player psychology issue of, if there is only one tank on the field, maybe it's the size of them, maybe it's how easy it is to hit them, but everyone is incentivized just to shoot the tank. The reason why they're giga tanky and super raid bossy and have all these passives like the headshot reduction is because they take so much brunt and so much heat that they need these things or they get blown up. And so the problem becomes is like, do we need to? This is part of the reason why people think I'm crazy for like all the smash the glass, delete the tanks. Part of the reason why is because the way tanks are in Overwatch, and maybe this is more of a 5v5 problem than 6v6, so, you know, take the W 6v6 side, is the fact that there's a lot of focus. Actually, you know what? Even 6v6, there's a lot of focus on shooting the tanks. And so I don't know how you fix that. Maybe that's just what tank is. Everyone just loves shooting tanks, whether that's one tank or two tanks. But in one tank, it just feels worse because everyone's like, well, there's not a second tank, so I guess I just shoot this guy. Everyone just shoots tanks. The real beauty in 5v5 is when you just stop shooting, when you don't have to always shoot tanks. And if I play DPS and you start thinking about the fact that, wait a minute, there's only one tank, I can take more angles, I can shoot anyone else. I don't have to shoot the tank all the time. That's when the gameplay and the beauty of 5v5 opens up to me, because then I'm like, dude, I'm not going to get contested on every angle. I'm not going to get marked on every angle because there's an off tank just flying at me like some diva just running at me with Matrix. That's not going to happen in 5v5. If there's one diva, they're gonna have to deal with a lot more. So I'm gonna have a lot more space as a DPS to be able to make things happen, or even as a support to maybe take an angle, look for an aid, or do something crazy, do something I wouldn't be able to do as comfortably or as easily in 6v6, just because there's less space on the map to play through, or more angles are going to be marked. And people, for some reason, the average player psychologically just doesn't think about that or want to do that. And I don't know how to make them do that. I think like if psychologically people just like stopped going for the easy dopamine of I must shoot tank and do only tank things for the entire game, you'd have a lot more fun in 5v5. Stop shooting the tank and shoot other people, and you realize 5v5 is pretty damn good. But it's because people psychologically incentivize, or they just want to only shoot tanks. Tanks then feel bad if they're not tanky enough. And then we get to cascading issues of why tank in 5v5 is the way it is. So I think that's the problem that needs to be addressed in 5v5. And I don't know what the solution to that is. I don't have an easy one for that one, sadly. How do you fix player psychology? Do you make tank smaller? Do you delete the tank roll, like I said? Do you just like, you got to change tank pretty significantly for that to happen? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, Spilo's made many videos talking about how you can do these kind of tweaks to make incentivize certain behavior, but that is a development problem, right? You have to kind of figure out how to encourage certain things in your player while also giving them certain freedoms to do whatever the hell they want. So, Hawk, do you want to summarize, maybe, I won't ask you to speak for Samito, but maybe, I know you guys have had discussions
Speak
constantly.
in his voice.
Yeah, speak like Sam, exactly. Do your best Sam impersonation. But yeah, just give us your overall concluding thoughts and your future like plans. Like, what are you hoping to see now that you got it actually back in the game?
Yeah, I did it alone. My concluding thoughts are I'm just happy with the game it is right now. Like I like you said, you kind of were done with the game a year ago. I was too. I was so done with the game. I was not happy with my life playing professionally at all anymore, due to not even just the game, just because the scene. But it was time to move on. I was not happy at all, like I said. But yeah, like they pulled me back in. They made all these changes that I've wanted over the years, and whether it was the rivals or not, I don't know. If some of it might be, but most of it probably wasn't. Like, the game just feels really good right now, and for the future of it, I'm kind of worried because they have Stadium 5v5 roll lock. That's going to be they're going to start marketing that in the coming weeks. I guarantee it. Start pumping that, and that's another queue time they have to worry about. You have what else do you have? You have 5v5 roll queue, another queue to worry about. And then you have 6-6 open queue, another queue to worry about. And I mean, obviously open queue is a little like more open. you don't have to worry about queues as much, but you do start to worry because you're starting to see it right now. Like 5v5 queue times, at least in the higher ranks, are skyrocketed compared to when they used to be before 6v6. Like the queue times have gotten pretty bad. It might get worse with another mode like Stadium. They really need to start thinking about like what they want to do. Like, do they want to have 5v5 only be in Stadium, have 6v6 be the main competitive mode? Do they want to rotate each season? Do they want to try 6v6 roll queue? Like, there's a lot of questions that to answer. That I'm surprised that they even did 6v6 this much when they have Stadium planned. It's kind of like, what are they going for here? Like, I don't think they can have all three of these modes on at all times. I don't think they can, or else one of them is going to be irrelevant.
Can I chime in really fast? That may
Yeah.
I think Stadium's going to be the uber casual mode. I don't think it's going to affect your queue times at all. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I have my own like theoretical problems with Stadium, but it might be a uber casual mode, but might not be. Maybe like it also begs the question like, do most players even care if it's 5v5 or 6v6? Like, will people like just play the game right now? If 6v6 is the main mode, they wouldn't really care. Like, you put it on the left side of the screen, how many more players are you gaining? Like just by them clicking the pressing play, you know? Like, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I don't know when they're going to do it. They haven't really announced their plans for like the second half of the year, or obviously there's going to be a big shakeup next year. I'm hoping 66 is a big part of it. Maybe it's the main format of the game. I don't know what they're going to do. If it did come back to be the main format of the game, I would come back and play this game, like compete, because I love the game that much, but I would never come back to play 5v5 competitive ever again, no matter what. In like full time or even part time. But yeah, like I'm very happy with it's been done. I cannot stress enough how well a job they've made 6v6 into like a real thing while fixing all the problems of not all the problems, fixing a lot of problems of Overwatch 1. And I think bans will be a good addition. I think there's just so much going for Overwatch right now where they can actually go on the offensive and like start taking these players from rivals, because I think Overwatch is like such a good game, and this is someone that's been like, I'm known as like a negative person, but I want the game to be the best it's been. Like it's my favorite game, and like it's just I'm just happy. Like they've done a great job, and it feels crazy to say that because it feels like we finally got the Overwatch we wanted. After years of like just stagnating it,
Wow,
Yeah,
what a
and-
shill. Kidding.
It's
Sorry, Hawk. What are you saying? This is just me. I was just doing a meme here. Hawk, are you saying that you're not going to sub in for Kellen when he can't play Diva or some crap? You're not going to sell in for
maybe
Kellen.
maybe I
anytime soon?
would, but I would never scrim full time. Like I don't have the time to do that, and I just get so. It's just like such a. It's just not the same. Like it's 66 just fires me on all cylinders. Like I'm playing Diva. Like anyone can play Diva in 5v5. Like the skill gap of tanks. If it were to go back in 6v6 and like the highest level, the skill gap of tanks just widens so large. Like in 5 seconds, you could just know someone's throwing it. You know how like there's a decent amount of main tank players that can play Monkey right now. No, like it goes back to down to the days where you're like less than 5 players are playing Monkey in the world. And if you're on that hero, you're throwing the game. Like that is just. It is the more, like you said earlier, it's the more depthful game at the highest level.
Well, that little memeing aside, I think the sentiment that you left us on, Hawk, was a good one to kind of bring the show a close to, which is that you're having fun and you just want the best version of the game, and the fact that you still love the game, still have so much passion for the game, I think is kind of beautiful and also true for everyone on this panel. I think the only reason these guys are here and they're talking and they're so passionate is that they all want Overwatch to be the best version. It is the love of their life, despite the partners they may or may not have. Overwatch is the true person they're wed to. So, hopefully it's just encouraging. I think the devs have done a great job in actually listening and iterating and continuing to make Overwatch a more refined version of what it could be, and kind of taking all the feedback bits. And we're seeing the evidence of that in all the changes they've made. So it's great for everyone involved. I think that they've gotten all this done, and encouraging signs for what they should bring in the future. Now, anything else you guys want to say quickly, of course, before because I know this is like never ending. We could always just add another tangent. But anything else you want to say before I let you get going?
Is that we all do actually want the best for the game? Whether you want that, whether you prefer 5v5 or 6v6 or whatever. I think a lot of especially maybe this came from the last time we did this debate, the original 5v5 6v6 episode, that it got like, I feel like the community got more heated than our debate ever was. Like our debate was heated to a certain level, but the community took that to like an 11 or a 12. It was kind of like, it got to like a really bad place, and I think people need to just calm down and realize that, particularly people on this panel, all just want the best for the game, but also like, guys, it's not that serious. Like at the end of the day, right now the game is in the best place it's ever been, and Blizzard are willing to test around things and try and make the best decision possible. So just trust that they will currently try and make the best decision possible, and that it's like, this is not like a life or death, and people need to calm down a little bit and not treat the whole 5v5 6v6 thing as hyper seriously as they did over the past year, because some of the stuff I saw was just like, come on, we need to calm down and just chill for a second, touch some grass. So yeah, talking to you, Samito fans, you viewers.
Well, at least people care. Like the worst thing you could have is people just not caring about the game and literally just
Yeah.
more
Samito
people
viewers
not even
are
talking
more
about it.
aggressive about the topic than he is. That's the crazy
Oh, I
thing.
don't doubt it.
Yeah, I think clearly, last word on that is like, yeah, it got stupid. It just the discussion, the toxicity around it, in a way that it like had no business doing. Like it's just not high enough stakes for people to get as vitriolic as they did. But that's the internet for you.
They did let it marinate for a little bit too long. Like they should just came out and like talked about it. Like there's no reason for a PvP game to not have multiple formats to play the game, especially when you have something like 5-5 open queue. It's just like completely imbalanced and it wasn't like made to be like it wasn't made to be taken seriously. So there was obviously room there. So I don't know.
Also
Like,
had like Malga, Orisa, Hog, Ram metas like back to
Oh,
back
God,
to back
yeah,
to
yeah.
back for months
just
on
bad,
end.
just
So,
just
yeah.
Yeah,
bad,
and I
bad
think
gameplay for like
the
months on
discussion
end.
the discussion became a lot better the minute they released that, I think, blog or whatever it was that was like, we're gonna make 66 in the game at some point. Like they once they said like we're putting it back in at some point.
Yes, finally you
The-
said something.
Yeah,
Thank
like
you.
the discussion died down like significantly. Like people were instantly like, okay, well we'll see what happens when it happens. Then like we don't have to.
I know I was when I saw that tweet where he tweeted the blog post or saying we talking about like oh my god, they finally acknowledged it. They finally said the words, because there's people behind the scenes like, yeah, I know why 6v6 not in there. People are hinting that it was because the Switch or some like stupid reasons why I couldn't be in the game for something, but like it shouldn't have been this like topic that was so like hated on, or like, because the reality is the games are not that different. Like they really it's a little bit different for a tank. It's a little, I mean, it's way different for tank, a little different for the other two roles, but like they're really similar. Like these games don't play completely different, and like it shouldn't have gotten to this point ever. Like it should have just been like a natural thing where, okay, well, do we want to revisit this? Was it just like a fad? You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from Spilo or Hawk before we let you get going?
No.
All right, well, thank
it
you
was a
so much
pleasure,
for your
boys. Thank
you so much for your time and
having
company again. Yeah, so like I always say, AVRL always first. Oh, we always go long, and it's like always whenever I get like AVRL and Spilo, it's not even their fault this time, but it's always it's gonna be a 3 hour plus. You see those names on the title, it's gonna be over 3 hours.
See you guys next year. We'll do the same again next year, hey?
I always enjoy having you guys here. So yeah, next year there's gonna be 7v7 coming out, or 4v4 or something. There's gonna be a new thing to discuss. So appreciate
This will
your
be a
time as
yearly
much.
topic.
Please
Thank you for having me
go
back.
show these guys
Appreciate
some
it.
love, and thanks so much. Have a great rest of
Thanks,
your day,
guys.
guys.
All right,
Peace
see ya.
out. Have a good one, guys. Thank you.